if he's plank of the week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, good evening. Welcome to the show. I like this time slot, 7 till 10. Yes, I'm here with you Monday to Thursday in Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan's throne, if you will, because he is otherwise disengaged. One assumes he's gone on a holiday somewhere to moan and whinge and bark along with his dog. God bless that man. Anyway, it's a wonderful time to be in Talk Towers, I must say, but it does mean you have to live your day upside down. You have to do all your socialising and all of your evening stuff and then reverse your day to sort of getting serious and sensible later on, which is, well, it's potentially perilous. I think I'm going to hold it together just about okay. I tell you what I did, though, in that time period that I was sort of wafting around waiting to be productive. I went down to the St George's Day extravaganza in Trafalgar Square. That's right, put on by none other than the Mayor of London. So I thought, I want to go and do the patriotic thing and celebrate the patron saint of England, this here country of which London is the capital city. I'm going to go and see what the festivities look like. You probably would have had a better time going to little Soddington's church fete, if I'm honest with you. I did meet in the, well, I was going to say in the crowds. Crowds is sort of putting it, it's a bit hyperbolic. I did meet some amazing pearly kings and queens who I'm sure if I'd seen what they were offering early on in the day, and Morris dancers. Apparently at some point there were Morris dancers. I would have really liked it. When I turned up, however, there was a sort of stage with some beatboxers and a few people milling around, and I thought, I'm going to get myself a hog roast. That was billed, that was promised on the itinerary, a hog roast, and I thought I'm going to get a nice tray of succulent, steaming, juicy, fatty pork with the crackling and the apple sauce and the stuffing. Except there was a shawarma bar and something called, that it called itself a Chinese, T-H-I-A-N-E-S-E, a Chinese food shack. And I thought to myself, I don't really get what this is. What are you doing here? It wasn't promoted. There was no sort of... I went to Trafalgar Square on Friday for the Passions of the Christ, and it was jammed. You couldn't move a centimetre from the front door of the National Gallery, looking down on that balcony area all the way down to Nelson's Column. It was heaving. And I thought to myself, how important is this? This is amazing to see the revitalisation of Christianity in this country. And as the final hours of Jesus Christ were played out, there were people watching and weeping and cheering. It was truly remarkable. So I go to the St. George's Day, whatever you'd call it, Fantasia today, and let's just blame the weather. No, actually, let's not blame the weather, because that was the most English thing about the blimmin' celebration. Let's blame Sadiq Khan. Anyway, we're going to be talking about a lot of things coming up, including the death, of course, of Pope Francis. That was announced this morning. Very classy going out on Easter, isn't it? I think we've been teed up that he was in very ill health up until this moment, but now we get the spectacle, the amazing sort of cinematographical opulence of the conclave with the white smoke and the grey smoke and the plotting and the who's going to be the next pope. And look, I'm not a Catholic, but there is something captivating and mesmeric about the whole the whole sort of pantomime of it. But we're going to be talking about what happens next. Why is this important to the Lord? Why is the leader of the Catholic Church important perhaps to us, to you? What's it going to represent? People saying there's going to be a DEI hire. The next pope might well be the first pope perhaps from a Commonwealth country that isn't an established, let's say, a papal outpost. And I think to myself, well, you do that, and I bet they're going to get rid of a load of the woke stuff if that happens. I have also teed up with Jeremy a very important interview we've got coming up at 8 o'clock, and that is with a young man who is only, I believe, 19 years of age. And how brave this young man is. He knows that he is the product of, essentially, a rape gang. Jaden Sheeran's mother was just 14 years old, and she was raped by a member of a grooming gang. She was plied with Malibu, taken to a hotel room by a group of older men for an Eid party. She woke hours later, regaining consciousness, to find she'd been raped in Staffordshire. Jaden is the son of that tragic incident. His mother is no longer with us, but he was brought up by Ange, his grandmother. And Ange is joining us to talk about their fight for justice. I think it's going to probably send shivers down your spine. It's one of those rare occasions when you read something so diabolical and moving that has happened, something that you're aware of the monstrosity, the horrors of things that take place in this country. And it's only when you really speak to people who still live through the tremors of those actions today that you can really take hold of how many people this has affected and how, and begin in your own head to try and assimilate and understand what people have been put through and how abhorrently negligent our judicial system is to looking after people who have gone through such things. We're going to be talking about a lot of other stuff as well. I won't bore you with the details. You'll just have to stay tuned, because I'm with you until 10 o'clock tonight. And if you want to throw in your two-bit and join us for some communal catharsis, let us know what you think and feel about the stories we are discussing today. I would love to hear from you, because this is the moment in time, probably at home, snuggle down on your sofa, pour a G&T, a glass of red, whatever is your poison. And we're going to keep you company, and we want to hear your thoughts. Let it all out. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. That is charged at your standard network rates. You can use that number to send me a WhatsApp as well, or even leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. If it's too much for you to type, then just hit that little microphone and let me know your thoughts, and hopefully we'll play them out later on the show. 87222 is the number to text me. Remember, you've got to write the word talk before your text. That way it knows how to come to this here studio. And if you'd rather just contact us on X, Elon Musk's own platform, we're at talkTV. A message has come in already saying, hi Alex, St George's Day is on the 23rd of April. Sue in West Sussex. Well, normally, Sue, it is, but I didn't realise, like Easter, it's a movable feast if it clashes with things. And then it turns out that the London recognition of the St George's Day celebration has been today. Yes, it was promoted, wasn't it? Sadiq Khan couldn't hold himself back on telling us the importance of the patron saint of England, the capital city of this country's patron saint, the capital city that he represents. That big celebration is going to be taking place in Trafalgar Square today. You all heard about it, didn't you? Coachloads of people were bussing themselves in. They couldn't wait to be part of celebrating all things English, our legacy, our heritage, our pride, our national identity. Yeah, it didn't really work out that way. All right, I am glad to say that I am joined by the one and only Russell Quirk, who's been to the barbers, it seems. Hi, Russell.
Yes, by the looks of it, I spent too much time in there as well, didn't I?
Or not enough. It depends which way you want to come down.
Too much off, perhaps, as many people here have told me. But hey, look, you know, the military look. You know, we might need the military sometime soon, might we? Not just to clear bags from the streets of Birmingham, but other things. So look, here you go.
Can I just say, St George technically was Turkish, so you know, you're just kind of being a patriot right now.
Well, and do you know how many English popes there have been?
I do not.
One.
Which one?
900 years ago. Pope Adrian IV.
Adrian.
Adrian IV, yeah, Adrian.
It's a bit Scottish, it's a bit Celt.
Well, sounds a bit of like a Rocky movie, isn't it? Adrian. But yeah, isn't it outrageous that Britain and England in particular have only ever had one Pope
you say
in
that.
900
You
years?
say that, but you do realise there was that period of time where people were burning each other at the stake and the Protestants and the Catholics were fighting each other, and then we kind of came out of the Church of England because Henry VIII just wanted
Do you think
some
the
new wives.
Catholic Church might now not still hold Henry VIII against us? I mean, that was 500 years ago. I think they can get over it.
I do find it, because I'm an Anglican, right? And
I'm a Catholic, by the way. But not a practising one.
Right. Well, I'm a practising Anglican.
Unless it suits.
So there, I felt I got a bit sassy there. And I sort of went, well.
But actually, there's no real benefit to being a Catholic. I mean, you know, all that guilt.
What I don't understand is Jesus never went, when he was like, you know, going about the place and teaching, you know, the word of God. He never went, and some of you will be Methodists and Baptists and Catholics and Pentecostals, and you people are going to do it like this and believe this. No, he just went and preached.
Well, he was Jewish, don't forget, as well.
Of course, he was Jewish as well, yeah. Can't we just make it simple?
Well, can't we just not have any religion at all? I mean, despite the fact that I'm a Catholic, I think religion is the root of all evil, Alex. Ooh.
Well, it's still Easter. It is Easter Monday, and you're speaking to a Christian.
Easter was yesterday. We can now say it. But isn't it great that we can say things about our religion as Christians, whether you're Protestant or Catholic? We can make jokes about the Pope dying, and you know, terrible and devastating as it is, very, very sad. I'm sure he was a great Pope. I wasn't really paying attention, if I'm honest. But I've already seen jokes on social media. You know, for instance, the Pope Mobile pretending that it's on Auto Trader for sale. Ha ha ha. Right now, I'm not saying this to be distasteful. My point is going to be: can you imagine being a part of a certain other religion and taking the rise?
The best
out
meme.
Of it? You couldn't do that. I wouldn't even get out the building alive.
The best
Alex.
Easter meme I saw, and look, I'm a church-going Christian, right? And I loved Easter. It was a very powerful Easter for me. I just thought it was the congregation in my church was just overflowing, and I put something on social media about that, and it went viral. And so many people, all comments underneath saying "Same in my church, same in my church," packed to the gills. And I think there's something very powerful going on out there. And yet, one of the best memes I was sent this Easter was a woman saying to Jesus, "What? So yeah, you just died for 3 days, and that's why you couldn't get in touch." I thought that was absolutely brilliant. I thought that was absolutely classic. So you're right, you know, there is a humility. There is something very important about being able to talk in a self-deprecating way and understand just logically what is supposed to be offensive and what clearly is not. And now, in keeping in the vein of trying not to be offensive, let's find out a little bit more about the passing of Pope Francis, who he was as a character, what this means for the Catholic Church, his replacement, and some of the pomp and ceremony, if you will, that will now take place. A sort of I find it sort of mystic when they get into their conclave and they have discussions, and then the smoke goes up. It's a beautiful tradition. There's something very captivating about it.
It's a good job that Hollywood made that very film, the Conclave, which I only watched 3 or 4 weeks ago. Now we're all experts.
Right. Well,
now we know exactly what happens.
I can't say I've seen it, but I know it ends in what could be a very sort of wokish way, let's say. Sure. Anyway, let's speak to Caroline Farrow, who's columnist at Catholic Universe. Caroline, thank you so much for coming on the programme. Talk to me, first of all, about Pope Francis. We knew that he was suffering from various conditions. I think he had been hospitalised with pneumonia, and it'd gone quiet for a while. And then we learn on Easter Monday that he has indeed passed away. Talk to me about Pope Francis and his legacy.
Well, it's interesting because I was just laughing along with your jokes, although I was hardly disagreeing with Russell. And I think actually Pope Francis would have laughed at some of your jokes himself. He had a great sense of humour, and I think a lot of people are saying, well, is his legacy going to be? And in some ways, it's too early to say, because it's only when we have the benefit of hindsight, the perspective of history, that we can really put his legacy in context. But I think certainly one of the things he will be remembered for is this public ministry he had of humility and servitude. So he really wanted to very publicly live out his vocation of being yes, he was the leader of the church, but he was also, like all of us, a servant of Christ. So he eschewed a lot of the trappings of the papacy. So he didn't wear the red mozzetta, the cape, for example, is what it's called, the Pope sort of traditionally wears. And he decided not to wear the red shoes, for example, that's traditionally worn by a Pope. And he shocked everybody after he was elected by deciding to travel home on the bus instead of using the papal limousine. And I think this is very much going to be his legacy of some people found it quite performative, the way he really wanted to show that he was humble and he had humility and he was a servant. And also the way he very famously, very shortly after he became Pope, he said, "I want to be the Pope of surprises. I want to make a mess." And that's what he came in and did. And his vision of the Catholic Church was one as a field hospital. So he knew that the Catholic Church has this reputation. We have very strict doctrine, and that there are people who feel very alienated, as a result of their life circumstances. They feel unwelcome. So his ministry was all about reaching out to those peripheries and trying to make people who didn't feel included feel that they were included, and that the gospel message is for everybody. It's not just for a select few people who think of themselves as good.
I mean, the pomp and ceremony of the Catholic Church is something as an Anglican that I find very sort of foreign to me. I don't, I'm not up to date with how it all involves. I'm reading here the death of the Pope triggers a formal and lengthy period of mourning with many historic rituals, including certifying his death by calling out his name 3 times, sealing his apartment doors with red ribbons, breaking the papal ring with shears. There's certainly a lot of ritual surrounding the death of the Pope in Catholicism. And what you're saying is he would rather that wasn't necessarily the case. The popes get to choose their own papal name, I think, don't they?
They do, and of course that was a big break with tradition. Francis was the first pope to take that papal name, and he was after St. Francis of Assisi. But also Francis was a Jesuit. He was a priest of the Jesuit order, and he was the first pope from Latin America. He's although his parents were Italian, he was raised in Argentina. And there's a famous Jesuit saint called St. Francis Xavier, who did a lot of missionary work traveling to the East. And so there was this idea that Francis was going to sort of evangelize from West to East. And that showed, I think, from the moment that he stepped out on that balcony. I remember 12 years ago, I was commentating. I had my list of papabile, the papal candidates. And Francis stepped out onto the balcony and everybody's jaws dropped in shock because he hadn't been considered to be a contender this time around. And we were sort of like, oh my goodness, we didn't have him on our sheet. And we all had to sort of do some quick cribbing. But going back to the pomp and circumstance, the rituals of the Catholic Church, this is from a time, of course, where we didn't have the internet and we didn't have newspapers, and things needed to be done in a very sort of structured and also transparent way. So the conclave and the tradition of the smoke, that's how people knew what was happening. And yes, the Pope used to have a lot more political significance than he does today. I mean, that's not to say he doesn't have political significance, but interestingly, Pope Francis has also pared down some of the funeral rituals. So, for example, previous popes would be their body would be laid on a catafalque, like a raised platform in the church. Pope Francis is going to have his body placed in his coffin on the floor. So that people can still fall through and venerate, but he wants to be lowly. And again, there was this papal tradition that a pope would be laid in 3 coffins, one of oak, one of cedar, and one of lead. I'm sorry if I've got one of the woods wrong. Whereas now Pope Francis has asked that he's laid in just a single coffin of wood and zinc. And he's also eschewing another tradition. So normally popes would be buried in St. Peter's Basilica, St. Peter's Square in the centre of the Vatican, whereas Pope Francis has asked that he's buried in St. Mary Maggiore or St. Mary Major, which is a Catholic basilica, but it's, out just, I think it's in, sorry, I should know this, it's in Rome, but it's not right in the centre of the Vatican. And again, that's because he has a very personal devotion to Our Lady, Mary, so the Virgin Mother of God. So he's breaking these traditions. I mean, the thing I wonder, okay, is I'm not saying he's wrong to break these traditions, but then this makes it very difficult for a successor to come in and say, well, actually, I do want the red rosetta, I do want the red shoes, I do want this, not because they're wanting to be, a showman. They're not trying to be like, say, Jude Law. I don't know if you've seen the young Pope, but these traditions that Pope Francis got rid of, they do all have they're all very heavy, symbolic meanings, and it was just his style of papacy that decided to do away with that, which, some of these trappings did get a lot of criticism, and people said, well, how is that related, to Christ the humble carpenter? And I almost hope that a new pope does reinstate some of these traditions, because it can be an interesting teaching moment, a moment of evangelization. But I think it will be hard for his successor.
I mean, talking about successors, there are a number of runners and riders, for want of a better phrase. Cardinal Turkson, who is a Ghanaian, was the bookies' favourite at one point when Francis was chosen in 2013. He would be the first black pope. And for those going, oh, well, DEI higher, my sense, I used to live in Ghana, actually. My sense, actually, is when you reach out to the Commonwealth and the developing world, you actually find a more sort of small c conservative view of how religion should take place. I mean, when I look through all of these names, there are plenty of men, septuagenarians and largely, who are supposed to be pitted to be the next pope. Does it really matter? How much does it matter where the pope comes from, what sort of pope they're going to be, whether they are a conservative pope, whether they are a liberalising pope? How much does this affect, do you think, the belief system of Catholicism that's spread around the world?
Well, it's interesting you mention that, because there's certainly, as you said, Cardinal Turkson, and a lot of people would like Cardinal Sarah as well, Cardinal Robert Sarah, but he's 79 and he's 80 next month, or he's 80 in June, so whether or not he could just sneak in. And also, I heard Russell mention an English pope. Timothy Radcliffe has recently been made a cardinal, so he could potentially be in the running as well. But he's very liberal. But it's true what you say about popes from the Commonwealth, particularly popes from Africa. I mean, let me tell you, there are so many candidates for the priesthood in Africa. They're actually sending them over to the UK. And it's really hard to become a priest in Africa, because the places at the seminary are very, very limited, whereas in the UK we have something of a vocations crisis. I don't think it really matters per se where the next pope comes from, although you're right. African Catholics tend to be very sort of small c conservative. I think what matters is that we have a pope that is a truly humble servant of God, a pope that wants to lead. And I think there's a lot as well of confusion or misunderstanding. People believe that whoever the pope is, that they can come in and sweep away Catholic teachings. They can change all the Catholic teachings that they don't like or makes them feel uncomfortable, whether that's on sort of sexuality, whether that's, on marriage or gender ideology, whatever that might be. And in fact, no pope can do that. That's not within the pope's gift. It's not possible.
Is this not?
But, however, I think it is important to make people realise that it doesn't matter what your background is. You're still welcome.
Is this not the sort of? I mean, reading about Cardinal Sarah here, born in French Guinea, another possibility is the first black pope, but is essentially somebody who is far more conservative, has denounced gender ideology as a threat to society, spoke out against Islamic fundamentalism. Is it not that actually, the Pope shouldn't be a follower. The Pope is not there to sort of squish himself into the preordained confines of what society is being taught to believe in 2025, 2026, but to lead, to be the voice of God, to represent the religion and the fundamental teachings of that religion, not to say, how am I going to adapt what is inherent to this belief system to what is now being spread in society. And we can see very quickly how a set of ideology, if you will, can last as long as, you know, a can of evaporated milk in your pantry. We've seen the Supreme Court ruling getting back to common sense and going, women are biologically women, of course, and yet how we were all swept up in the madness and having to change our language and having to make apologies for even deigning to utter those words just a few weeks ago. And surely what people in the Catholic Church are crying out for, as I believe are Anglicans when we look at the Church of England, is someone to say, this is the Bible, this is the teaching of Christianity, not how do we squish this and shape this and mould this like a cheap tub of plasticine into something that might be more attractive to more people.
I think that's right. You know, the role of the Pope is, and the Church is to be timeless, universal truth, not to sway with the zeitgeist. And in fact, Pope Francis was very, very outspoken on gender ideology. He called it evil. He called it satanic. He compared it to sort of Nazi ideology being taught in classrooms. And I remember once, very funnily, I quoted him on social media, and a notorious trans activist then tweeted at Pope Francis and said, "Oh, this Catholic, she's saying this," and I was just laughing, thinking, well, I'm actually just paraphrasing what the Pope himself has said. But I think as well it's interesting because you touch on religion, Christianity doesn't fit neatly into a left-right political praxis. And a lot of people say religion and politics should be separate. I kind of hasten to, I disagree.
I was going to say, Henry VIII kind of thought that.
It's our faith that informs the political decisions we make.
Right.
So Pope Francis spoke about migrants, which obviously, and immigration, which obviously upset some people. But I think what he said was important because we have to remember, in and amongst all the debates we have about immigration and migrants and, you know, what countries' policies should be, there are vulnerable human beings at the centre of this who have the same dignity and rights as we all do. So we need to be very careful, and I think the Pope was trying to remind us of that. We need to be very careful when we're talking about such a heated topic that these are human beings at the centre of this debate. These are human beings with dignity and rights. We need to be careful not to dehumanise them. But you know, to bring this back to a local level, in the UK, we currently have we have the debate about assisted suicide, right?
Yes.
We have a general election coming up in Runcorn, and Catholics will be asking the candidates in that particular election. It doesn't matter what political party they're from, but the Church is speaking out very strongly about assisted suicide. So Catholics will be informed by their faith to say, okay, this guy, you know, I don't know, this guy may be from a political, or this girl might be from a political party I don't normally support, but actually the first most important vote they're going to have is on assisted suicide.
Right.
How are they going to vote? And so our politics, our faith, you know, our faith does inform our politics and how we vote, and the same in the local elections. So for example, in the local elections, we need to ask if candidates are going to give lots of money to Pride, for example, or are going to support, you know, dodgy RSHE policies in schools. Are they going to spend money on rainbow crossings, whatever? So, you know, actually our faith does inform how we vote, and this is where the leader of the Catholic Church still has influence and sway. And of course, I think what people aren't aware of is the Catholic Church does undertake an awful lot of diplomacy. It is behind the scenes diplomacy. But when we had the WikiLeaks scandal 10 years ago, we saw quite how involved the Vatican had been in various negotiations. So
and we forget, of course, don't we? Because by and large, we were once, I'm not saying people aren't Catholic in this country. My church is behind the oratory, actually. But we have sort of we went through that that sort of thorny schism here in the United Kingdom, but Catholicism, of course, is the predominant religion of many of our neighbouring countries in Europe. I'm going to have to say goodbye to you now. Caroline, thank you ever so much for your insights. It's been fascinating talking to you. And when you come to that religion, that schism between the religion and democracy, if you will. I mean, we talk about how we went through that under Henry VIII, by and large. Ironically, we now have a national religion based upon a man wanting to, you know, get rid of a wife and upgrade her. Not to downspeak the church of which I'm a member. But, you know, Jesus fundamentally said, didn't he, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's? How do we marry the two? Interesting conversations are going to be happening over the next few weeks about who is going to become the next pope, what that means for the spread of Christianity, of course, around the world, and upholding the tenets of what is still the world's largest religion. Throw in your thoughts on this subject. 03444991000 is the number to dial if you'd like to talk to me and Russell about this. You can send me a WhatsApp using that number, or indeed leave me a voice note on that number. 8722 is the number to text. Remember to write the word talk before you message. We're on X at talkTV. Going to take a short break now. Going to read some of your messages and catch up with Russell just after this.
So here's an Easter egg with the word... Oh, hang on. Oh, no. They've left the word Easter out.
It's on the top.
Can you see that?
It's on...
Why?
They're hiding it.
They've got it up there.
They've hidden it.
But why isn't it on the front? It just says Cadbury's cream egg. Doesn't say anything about Easter. So I may have to stop buying Cadbury's chocolate, which I was probably keeping their company afloat.
It's American now anyway, since Peter Mandelson sold it for
It's not an Eid egg.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
There was I, speaking during the advert break, trying to convince Russell Quirk that my church is the church to be at. It is the coolest church. I love my church. But I can't convince Russell to stop being a heathen, unfortunately.
Rusty atheist,
on
sorry.
that, Lucy's message saying, Russell, this country needs Christianity. It is the foundation of the civilization we're in danger of losing in this country. Christianity will happily tolerate other religions, but it must be proudly maintained in our institutions and by our leaders in church and state, including His Majesty the King, if we're to continue enjoying the way of life we know and love.
How's religion going in Gaza? How's that working out?
That ain't Christianity, though, is it?
No, it's
don't
religion,
you
religion
start
is causing
saying that
everything that is bad about the Middle East.
Oh, get
it is.
on.
The same as it did in Northern Ireland and back in the Crusades.
Don't you?
Root of all evil.
Oh my goodness, I can't believe you said that.
Happy Easter, everyone.
Alex, ironic, isn't it? Jesus preached in open spaces, not inside buildings. But in England, he would now be arrested, as of people in silent prayer.
That's a fair comment.
But I mean, look, frankly speaking, I think if you look at a brilliant book, Dominion, it talks about how Christianity has had such a profound effect on the West, the progress of the West, the morality, the democracy that is now upheld internationally. And if you look at even the innovation that has come off the back of those civilizations that embraced Christianity, even if you take the religion out, it is a remarkable story of success. That's all I'd say. Right, because I get the last word. Because
yes,
it's,
it's
me
I'm very aware. Oh,
yeah, it's okay. We're going to pray for you. Don't you worry about that, Russ. Now, talking about praying for people, that could potentially be considered a non-crime hate incident if you happen to be in the vicinity of an abortion clinic. And apparently, UK police forces have now admitted they're uncertain whether recording non-crime hate incidents, or NCHIs, snappily, actually helps in tackling crime. Well, I've got a suggestion. It isn't a crime, so how does it help tackling crime? In fact, it's distracting you from tackling crime if you're going after someone who's used a word that someone else might find hurty. It is a nonsense. It makes a mockery of crime. It devalues what the police should be doing. I mean, Russell, this is just... You read articles like this and the police going, oh, I don't think we should be doing this. I don't think it's helping. And you're like, really? You didn't figure that out already?
Well, apparently the wisdom, and I use that term very loosely, from the College of Police, is that, yes, this is an indicator. So non-crime hate incidents, in terms of responding to them and monitoring them, is in some way intelligence, so that you can see within a community if something is bubbling under the surface, if there's an issue, if there's a problem, if there's one of, I don't know, there might be some patriotic people that we could maybe label as far right, I guess, and so on and so on. But we all know that that is just nonsense. What these things are, A, they're not a crime. What is it that the police think they're doing when it comes to doing things that relate to things that are not crimes? It's a bit like, ambulance drivers putting fires out, isn't it? It would be the same thing. Stick in your lane, police, and stop meddling with this. We all know, really, that what this is about. It's a hangover from COVID. It is a means of exercising power and authority on the part of senior police officers, and indeed, I'm sure, fuelled by government. The government loved it during the riots in the summer, didn't they? That they could impose such things, non-crime hate incidents on people, and also to play this Malicious Communications Act card, which is the most vague and pointless piece of legislation ever. Because, of course, if you say something to me and I don't think it's offensive,
you're a heathen.
You might say the same thing to somebody else and they believe it is offensive.
You're a
So
heathen.
it's completely subjective. So a crime should be black and white.
But is it
right?
not? But is it not? So you talk about, maybe it's an indicator of things bubbling up underneath
it's not.
them.
I'm saying
but
it's
it's
not.
not. But is it not completely the opposite of that? Is this actually not being orchestrated as a form of, I would go as far as to suggest, social engineering? That actually what is bubbling up under the surface are people who are very upset and discontented with things that are being imposed from the top down. We don't any longer have proper grassroots activism from the bottom up. The whole trans rights things didn't appear organically because trans people were being vilified and subjugated to horrific torture and abuse, although that is what we're told. These things now are imposed from the top down. You must believe in this ideology. You must believe in this. Yeah. And actually what is happening from the bottom up is people going, I don't, and I don't think I ought to. And that these non-crime hate incidents are largely being used to try and control the masses, to go along with a very thin filigree of, confected ideology that supranational organisations are coming up with.
So this is very much part of what we talk about a lot on this channel, which is the infiltration of authority by way of the left. So whether it's the civil service, whether it's the judiciary, whether it's our education system, and in particular our police, it is no coincidence that the people at the head of our police now are extremely educated, university kind of master's degree owning individuals that of course have probably been ideologically corrupted by way of that education system, because we all know what universities are like.
Brainwashed.
Yep. So of course it's going to then feed through from the woke ideology of universities through to the people that get those degrees that then become senior police officers. But what this really is, Alex, I'm afraid, and I don't want to gloss over this, but I also don't want to kind of scaremonger. Everyone knows that I hope that I'm no conspiracy theorist. This is us sleepwalking into a police state. That's what this is.
Oh, we're not sleepwalking into it. We already live in it, and we're waking up to that fact. Listen, we've got to take a short break now, but we're going to be continuing pretty much this line of conversation, because after the break, Russ and I are going to be talking about the fact that Sir Keir Starmer's been pretty quiet, hasn't he, since that Supreme Court ruling. Man don't know what to say. Suddenly, cat has got his tongue. When asked a few years ago whether or not you could say a woman could have a penis, oh, that's not the right thing to say. He was full of bombast, wasn't he? Now, the prosecutor-in-chief, who does everything the court says and does he said that he should do and imposes that on the rest of us, has been, ironically, quite quiet. We're going to be discussing that after this break. If you want to get in touch, numbers on the screen, 03444991000 is the number to call. That is the same number to send me a WhatsApp message or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp, 8722, the number to text, but talk before your message. And I'm back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is...
If only there was some sort of button you could press to see the advert makes it all I'm going to say. You've missed everything. There was me singing gospel, Russ filming it, we're slagging off the Romans. Then he said, but they built straight roads and hot baths. And I said, but they killed Jesus. It just got a bit mental, is all I can say. Sometimes I kind of think, actually, what happens when we're not rolling is the proper sort of kernel of magnificence.
We should put a show together, all the outtakes from the breaks.
It should be like, there should be like a special premium, subscriber platform.
That is a very good shout.
I know, if you're listening, the powers that be.
That's a very good shout.
Want to make a bit of extra cash money?
I was going to say for access to what we really say behind the scenes, but the trouble is, it's the same.
Oh my God, no. Well, no, it's not. Sometimes it's stuff like if that went out. Anyway, now talking about things that probably shouldn't be said and shouldn't be heard. Well, I think that tees up very nicely our beautiful montage of Sir Keir Starmer trying to handle the issue over what makes a woman. Let's roll.
Let's not leave out of account that there is a small minority of individuals who were born in a gender they don't now identify with. Some go through a process, others don't, and that is very traumatic.
And I think if we're able to have that debate in a constructive way, actually we'll be able to come to the consensus. Transgender women's rights are women's rights, and it is our women's movement collectively that can have the solution to that and can work with each other to it.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right.
That's something that shouldn't be said. Basic biology should not be said. You're a heretic if you say that. This is like going back down to Copernicus when he said that actually, guess what? The Earth goes around the sun, not the other way around. No, you must die! You must die! It's just bonkers, isn't it? My other half said something truly... You know, every now and then people just say something like that sums up everything. That is it. That is it. You've got to the nubbin of the situation. He said to me this morning, he's like, it's weird that it's become really sort of, you know, dinosaurish and right-wing to want to stand up for women.
Or to stand up for biology. I mean, a matter of fact, as in biology, by way of chromosomes.
Oh, but the facts were gone a long time ago. I just didn't think they were going to sharpen their knives and turn them against us.
But this whole, the point of this conversation, of course, is Keir Starmer, several days on, what are we, day 5, day 6, since that Supreme Court ruling, hasn't said a word. What do we think he would have said, and how quickly if the ruling had been the other way round?
Oh gosh, you'd love it. This is the interesting thing about Sir Keir Starmer. He is basically just a chief prosecutor. He loves law and order, and he loves actually, in all other situations, deflecting to it and saying, well, the law says this and that, the ACHR says that, oh well, the Supreme Court says that.
It's the law.
It is the law, that is what we must do.
Yep.
He's a man of loving whatever the latest fad in law is. And then all of a sudden it's one of the most important rulings. And like I said, this was brought about by women trying to make sure that women were safe. I mean, frankly, I don't understand how so many people out there lost their marbles over women going, we don't want hairy Jack with his distended testes coming down the women's bogs.
Yep.
That stands to reason, right? That's a perfectly normal thing to be like, this geezer over here with his gruff voice and his funny lunchbox wants to come into the women's loos. That seems like a bad idea. And it's like, well, you can't say that.
And in the montage just then, you got Angela Rayner, you know, who happens to be, I mean, freakishly somehow our Deputy Prime Minister, actually said the words, trans rights are women's rights. Whereas we all know, anyone with half a brain, with an IQ above about 70 knows that actually the promotion of trans rights, particularly men in wigs in women's change rooms, is the opposite of women's rights.
Right.
It's the opposite of that.
It's exactly. And, you know, it's always about whether men can go where girlies are. That's what they want. They want to dress as girls and go where the girls are for their own kicks and desires and fetishes. Yes, there are some genuine dysphoric people out there.
Yeah, but
right?
the other important thing to note is that
there's a huge number of people who are just after access to places they should not be allowed into.
There was an argument the other day between somebody and Graham Linehan, you know, the so-called disgraced comedian, right? Because he happens to have said a few things that are a matter of fact. And someone said to him, well, you know, give me an example of when, you know, a male that identifies as a woman has gone into a changing room and done something wrong. A few seconds later, he's copied and pasted about 100 incidents of men identifying as women, which you can't, by the way, but if you choose to, men that pretend to be women being hauled over the coals, being prosecuted, being charged, being arrested or whatever for incidents in changing rooms that they should not have been in.
But the thing is, what happens is this, that the powers that be suppress science, they suppress facts, they suppress data, they suppress any empirical evidence that goes against their sort of lunatic, fringe, ultra-leftist, regressive set of ideas. They will make sure that that stuff doesn't break the surface and get into the public domain, and anybody who deigns to even sort of try and conjure it up must be persecuted. And thankfully, we have had brave women standing up against this madness, being ostracised, being vilified, being threatened with rape, being threatened with their children being attacked, being cancelled from their positions,
people being fired,
being demonised, simply because they have said, look, when there are people who are genuinely dysphoric, like all other medical conditions, you shouldn't jeer and point and laugh and make their life difficult. You should be compassionate and empathetic, which is something that women do extremely well.
Yeah.
But we're talking about 0.0% of the population. There's also a lot of men out there who are autogynephilic, and they actually get a kick out of putting on a dress and listening to women pee.
Well, there's that, and there's also men that commit sexual offences that then magically identify as a woman a few days later, knowing that they're going to get off the hook.
The rapist
judicially.
wants to be among the women.
Yeah,
Who'd have thunk? It's like the wolf suddenly deciding he's not a
vegetarian. And for those on the left that say, no, that's
all.
not really a thing, well, look, you know, Bryson, blah, blah, blah. I mean, there are loads and loads of incidents of people getting an easy ride, no pun intended, by identifying as a woman so that they can end up, as they have done in Scotland, in a women's prison, even though they are a biological male.
When do you ever hear about women who have become men saying... Yeah, because it doesn't work like that, because of the disparity between the genders, because of vulnerabilities and physical differences.
But Alex, this is a big problem for the Labour Party, because they have spent years and years, particularly in government, talking about, you know, as Angela Rayner's just done, you know, this, you know, women can have penises, and you know it is okay for a trans woman to be in a woman's jail, and so on, all this nonsense. They've now been kind of pushed into a corner by this ruling, and as you say, Keir Starmer has spent a career falling back on and relying on the law. What he should now do is say, okay, we have a definition. We now know where we are. And also, I tweeted the other day a tweet that got loads of traction actually, where I said, when is Keir Starmer actually going to apologise? Apologise for allowing a culture and a society and a regime. Cult, yeah, whereby you've got, you know, nurses that have been fired because they've refused to call, you know, a man a woman. You've got 3-year-olds that have been suspended from nursery because they've accidentally, and obviously with no intention whatsoever, misgendered someone. Keir Starmer, if he was any man, again, no pun intended, and any leader would now stand up and say, OK, we now have a legal definition.
But this is it.
So now, going forward, we now know exactly what we need to do in terms of toilets.
Right. It goes back to what I said at the beginning, that actually suddenly it became dinosaurish and right-wing and nasty and cruel and outdated to actually stand up for women.
Well,
On that note, we're going to take another break now because we keep going over our time slots, Russ. We're not very good at timekeeping. Samara's been very chill behind that glass. Every now and then it's like...
It's a bank holiday.
Sam and Samara are like...
Aren't we allowed?
Come on then. Just Samara, not Sam. Sam and Samara. I can't get this right. Sam and Samara. Bean said, come on, Alex, get to break. We're going to do that now, by the way. This is it. This is break. Don't go anywhere. We're back after this.
Putin does not like President Trump. I know everybody's trying to make it out as though they're buddies. They're not. President Trump is the president of the greatest nation in the world, the United States of America. Russia has a dictator president and will kill off their enemies, kill off their political enemies. It is a mafia, and they are attacking innocent people in Ukraine. We need to make sure we're protecting Ukraine, because protecting Ukraine is America first. Russia will not stop with Ukraine. They will keep going.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. You've upset some people today. Oh, some messages. I love this
I've got
one.
news for you, Alex. I upset people every day.
Tell Russell he can live without Jesus, but he can't die without Jesus. Fact.
What?
I love that.
What do you mean?
Well, you're just going to end up...
What, I'll end up in hell? Is that a thing?
Just read it.
Hey, I went to school in Basildon. I know what hell's all about, believe me.
Sandra's message something very important here. The Supreme Court ruling, shouldn't they have made the distinction between a transvestite who claimed to be transsexual and genuine post-op transsexuals, like my friend who's 74 years old, had full gender reassignment surgery in 1991. She and others like her no longer have a penis. They present no threat to women and girls.
Not sure about that.
I think there is a sort of open door here to sort of say, look, if you really think you're a woman, are you going to actually go the whole hog?
It's some mitigation, I suppose.
It is some mitigation.
But they're still biological men. Let's just be honest about it.
Well, in terms of the sports element...
Yep, testosterone, height, muscle structure.
But I think there's always disabled lose. There's disabled, I don't know. Right, let's talk now, move on from that subject, but let's talk now about, it's like the game of what have they come up with today why they can't be deported.
Yeah.
And this one is more ridiculous, I think, than Chicken Nugget Gate, because an Iranian has claimed his social media puts him at risk of persecution if he's sent back. He said that he's got so many Facebook friends, he's at risk of persecution if he's returned to his home country. Delete your Facebook account then! Delete it, mate.
I mean, this is... But again, what we come back to here is those four letters, ECHR, and actually the Human Rights Act, which, of course, in 1998, thanks to Tony Blair, incorporated the European Convention of Human Rights, which has allowed not just this sort of thing to happen, but allow a left-leaning liberal judiciary to interpret the ECHR and the Human Rights Act incorrectly to their own political ends, so that we end up with the comedy of this kind of thing. I mean, we talk about this on Talk, literally every day.
All the time.
Because someone now identifies as homosexual, they can't be sent back to Syria, or they now say they're a Christian and they've got a tattoo of a crucifix on their arm, they can't be sent back to Afghanistan, and so on and so on. We are being played left, right and centre.
It's amazing, isn't it? Funny, last time I checked in Afghanistan, they aren't sort of swaggering around in sort of Speedos displaying their tattoos. They tend to be dressed up like they're working in a butcher's. So you can probably cover that tattoo up. Same with this. I've got so many Facebook friends who know I've been against the Iranian state that I can't go home. Well, delete your Facebook then.
Yeah.
Delete it.
But I still think, Chicken Nugget Gate is kind of up there, but in my top three for sure is definitely the rapist that couldn't be sent back to their country because they would be stoned to death for being a rapist.
Because rape is frowned upon.
What? Seriously.
None of this makes sense to me.
But we've got to repeal the ECHR, the European Convention element, out of the Human Rights Act. We have to.
But you've got to actually repeal the whole Human Rights Act. You can't just come out of the ECHR.
Yeah,
you've got to pull the weeds up from the roots. You've got to take the lot of it out.
Yep.
Because there's nothing that criminal law doesn't cover that human rights adds to, frankly.
Yeah.
Don't murder, don't maim, don't harass, don't steal, don't threaten, don't rob.
And I think
it's all pretty much covered in that.
And the other thing that I think we need to go back to, and now it's become a kind of, a word that shouldn't be talked about in British politics and on the British mainstream media, and that is the word deportations. Now, I know, Reform Now I think it seems, is kind of at odds with each other a little bit. You might disagree with that in terms of what Farage has said over the last few weeks. We have to get back to the deterrent, not just the act of deporting people, but the deterrent that says if you're here illegally, particularly if you then commit a further crime,
or if you break the law,
you're done.
It's very simple. Yeah, it should be very simple. I don't know why things that are very simple have to be so complicated and cost the taxpayer huge amounts of money in litigation. Russell Quirk, thank you ever so much. Now stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, because a big story coming up after the break. We're going to be talking to Jaden Sheeran's mother, who was about 14 years old when she was raped by a grooming gang member. She's passed away. We're going to be talking to the family about that awful incident after this.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humphrey Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar. Hello, and unfortunately, it catches on his Johnson.
If he's Plank of the Week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the show. Alex Phillips with you until 10 o'clock tonight, sitting in for the inimitable Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan, my former television husband, who is enjoying some well-earned rest. One assumes he is anyway. Lord knows what he's doing. He's probably listening to this and he's going to message me of his thoughts and feelings any moment now, because he is a bit of an addict to this channel, as everyone should be, because this is indeed the home of common sense. Now, we've got an exclusive for you tonight, because I don't quite know if the right word to say is I'm honoured or I'm proud or privileged, but it is with a huge amount of gravitas, actually, that I introduce the next guests on the show, because it's not often you get to speak to people who are brave enough to talk about harrowing personal experiences tethered to something that has now been widely flagged as a national tragedy, something that we all know has been pervasive in our society, that has been disgusting and malevolent. And we talk about things in terms of statistics. We occasionally hear court transcripts detailing the true horrors that went on as a result of the grooming gang's scandal, as people say. Scandal. I don't think scandal is a strong enough word. But I'm joined now by Jaden Sheeran and Ange Sheeran. Jaden is the son of Jodie Sheeran, who was raped by a member of a grooming gang at just aged 14. She was plied with Malibu before being taken to a hotel room by a group of older men for an Eid party. She woke hours later and remembered only regaining consciousness to find she had been raped at a hotel in Blurton, in Staffordshire. She became pregnant and DNA evidence supported her allegations, but the Crown Prosecution Service dropped the case on the day of the trial without explanation. She later died in tragic and disputed circumstances. Jayden was the son of Jodie and has spoken publicly about his traumatic upbringing. And Ange was Jodie's mother, Jayden's grandmother. Jayden and Ange, join me now. Can I just say thank you so much for having the tenacity, the temerity and the strength to talk about everything you went through. And I really don't even know where to begin. And it really is a great honour that I get to have this conversation with you. Jayden, I'm going to start with you. How, as you grow up, did you wrap your head around the circumstances within which you were born?
Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. To be honest with you, it's a whirlwind of emotions, so you don't really know how to feel. Like, growing up, it's like you feel a bit different to everyone else. So it's hard to explain and put into words how you do feel, to be honest with you.
I would imagine that that incredible woman next to you and your grandmother stroke your mother figure has been a huge amount of comfort. Ange, I mean, you have seen the most appalling thing happen to your daughter and have been able to rise to the challenge of giving Jayden a stable and supportive upbringing. How have you coped with everything along the way?
It's been so hard. I've been trying for over 2 years now to try and seek some form of justice for her. Because she was found dead all alone. She was scared of dying. But everyone I've turned to, I've had doors shut in my face. I've tried every politician. I've gone to the highest level with the police, the highest level with the Crown Prosecution Service. I've been to every news channel, every TV magazine, everything, and nobody would respond or help me. I just kept having doors slammed in my face. And all the evidence was there. She was raped. They got the DNA evidence of the attacker, and she was plied with that much alcohol. They said she wouldn't have been aware of what happened to her. And yet on the day of the trial, the CID officer came out and said, "I've got some bad news. We're sorry they dropped the case." I said, like, why? You know, if you've got the DNA, why? She says, all I can say is he got himself a very good solicitor and they see Jodie as an unreliable witness. That was it. We never had nothing in writing, nothing at all. That was the only reason we had.
Jayden or Ange, what would justice look like? What do you want to see happen? The circumstances surrounding all of this is just, it's far more harrowing and awful than most people can bear to think about. Most people have never gone through anything like this in their lives. What is it that you need to now see happen to begin to take a step towards righting such awful, horrific wrongs?
Yeah, I want him behind bars and some type of punishment. I think he's cost my mum her life. To be honest, I think he's cost me my life. I had a lot of, when I was younger, growing up, I had a lot of dreams to do a lot of things when I was older. They're all out the window now because my mum's not here. So I think it's best he pays for what he's done. They pay for what they've done, all of them, every single one of them. It's disgusting, and I think it's bang out of order what's happened now. We've been treated by governments, everyone. I think it's bang out of order, and for now, 2 years later, after she's passed away, obviously I'm glad attention's picking up on it, but it's 2 years on as well now. I'm also 19 years of age. It's 19 years too late. I think something's got to be done, and something's got to be done soon.
Do you have any awareness of what this man is doing now?
I believe he's in the same area as us, so for me it's quite scary for me and my family, but the fact of...
You came face to face with him, didn't you?
Yeah, it's the fact of we've got to walk around this area knowing full well we're in the same vicinity as these males, and knowing we've got to go work every day. Personally, I'll look over my shoulder every day because I don't know who's watching me, who's looking out to me. I know these males are dangerous, and I think what we're doing now will hopefully bring justice. But I think in the long run, they're still here. They're still in the same vicinity as us. So, in my opinion, I think nothing's changed, and I just hope there's some change soon.
Has this man ever faced any sort of punishment for his disgusting, reprehensible actions, which, as far as I can see, are totally supported with evidence that this is very easily proven?
No, what's funny is what I know of is the ad is DNA, but they wouldn't take my DNA. So they had everything they needed. I'm also living proof, and I've said I'm more than happy to give DNA, whatever, to get this sorted, but they still wouldn't take it on. So therefore, I think it's bang up. It's outrageous, to be honest, and it makes me blood boil that I have to come on here and show my face and to say physically how angry I am with it all.
We've been told that because the police and CPS, they've both blamed one another, vice versa. They've said it's each of their faults, and they've said, why aren't the Sheeran family taking out their own personal criminal case against the assailant? But I've been warned by that because I did ask an MP last year to use his parliamentary privilege to actually name the attacker, and that all fell through. That didn't happen. But then it emerged that if he would have used his parliamentary privilege to name the attacker, Jodie's attacker then would come at the family and sue us. So then, not only I was willing to do it, but not only then would he have took my daughter, I could have then been lining his pockets and making him rich. And he'd already took my daughter, so I wasn't willing to do that.
The burning sense of injustice in all of this, the way that right and wrong have been tilted upside down and on their head, and no one is giving you the time to listen to you. Have you at least had support, Jayden, in everything that you've gone through?
Absolutely none. Nothing. I was in and out of residential care homes when I turned 14, 15 after my mum was going through domestic abuse. I had no, even in the care homes, I thought it was out of order. I was treated. Got sent from Crewe up to Scotland, which is 4 to 5 hours away. I come back from Scotland, and then it was only 4 to 5 months later my mum passed away. So, and from there, I've still had nothing. From when media's got attention from it, I've had no support, nothing. I just think, more than me, to be honest, from my point of view, I think my nan needs a lot of support as well.
Yeah.
Because it's the situation my nan's in. She's lost her daughter. I've took a step up and realised that for the first 6 months she passed away, I was in my own shell. I didn't speak to no one. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to come publicly about it. But it's got to a point where my nan's suffering that bad, and I'm still suffering mentally, that I've got to do this to get some sort of justice. And at some point, I'm hoping at some point something will come from it, even if it's a bit of support, a tiny bit, just anything.
Listen, it's of no surprise to anybody what you've been through and what you are having to carry as a young man aged 19, and how this has impacted you. That you are as eloquent and put together and brave as you are right now, talking about how your nan needs support. And Ange, I cannot imagine how you feel at all to try and find the resolve now to put your arm around that boy, your amazing, amazing grandson, and fight for the both of you. How hard is it on a day-to-day basis? I mean, we all wake up in the mornings and think our job's rubbish, our relationships having difficulties, the commute to work is a pain in the neck, finances are tight, whatever it may be. I cannot even imagine how you carry with you the burden of what you have had to face. Ange, how do you do it?
It's very hard. My life's broken. My life will never be the same again. The only thing that's keeping me going is trying to gain justice for lovely Jodie. It might not be justice with a capital J, but that is the only thing that keeps me going day in, day out. I'm forever campaigning, doing things. Just that's the only thing that keeps me going.
Well, when people are closing the door, when people are saying, look, we'd love to help, but that, well, there's a risk here that actually he might fight back and actually end up gaining financially as a result. What sort of things are people saying to you that have caused them to shy away from taking up your cause?
I went to a meeting last year. I met with my MP and the head of the police, and that was very upsetting because the MP halfway through walked out of the meeting without saying why. The police says you need to let this go, and I said, well, I want to go public with this, but even my own local newspaper won't print it.
Why? Why do you need to let this go? Why do they think they have the authority to tell you both that you need to just live with it, this huge thing that is such a massive demon, a massive shadow cast over both of your lives, the absolute disgusting injustice of what this vile, despicable monster of a man has done, that you need to let it go? For whom? Why? Why do you need to let it go?
I believe personally it's to cover it all up. I think it has been for a long time now, and I think it's only the last couple of years where they're starting bringing it publicly. I think that they're dying to throw it under the bus and act like this doesn't happen. I think it's absolutely shocking. It's mental that my nan has had to go through all this and still to this day, still nothing. It blags my head at such a young age as well. I look at the whole situation, I think at different points, but I think how bad it is, how my nan and myself have been treated, my whole family, we're all broken. None of us will ever be the same again. We used to all have little family meetups. They don't happen no more ever since my mum's passed away. And that's only on certain people to blame. And honestly, I don't know what else to say other than it proper infuriates my blood.
They've said they've come so far at that meeting, the police, they said, when I said I wanted to go public, they turned around and they said, well, if you go public, the public can be nasty people. Are you ready for like the nasty comments? I said, I've lost my daughter, you know, I'm ready for anything. But they said, you're more than welcome to help us raise awareness, but there's nothing more we can do on getting justice for your daughter.
And another thing is, sorry for interrupting, but some of the comments that my nan's received since obviously coming online, like blame the parents and things like that, I think shame on you, because blame the parents. What sort of situation are the parents in to help a young woman in that type of life? The words groomed means a big thing, and if you look into the meaning of groomed, it's out of the parents' control once they are being groomed, in my opinion. So I think the comments and the backlash has been getting since coming online, it's absolutely disgusting.
Talk to me, Ange, about your late daughter Jodie. Talk to me about what happened, how she ended up in this just tragic of circumstances, how she then bore that throughout her life.
I didn't even know grooming existed. It was me and Jodie were sat on our settee 2018, 2019, and we watched a programme called Three Girls, and we sat there and watched it, and we both looked at one another and I said, oh my goodness. I said, that's you. I said, that's you to a T. And that's when I realised, I mean, it took till 2019 that she had been groomed, because like I say, the amount of times I rang the police, because I was told to report each and every time, which I did every single time, and the police would bring her back and they said, if your daughter keeps doing what she's doing, she's going to end up dead or raped. But now I think back, and I should have fought stronger then, because the police were finding her in cars with males under the influence, and all these males were over the age of 23, 24. My daughter was 14 at the time, but the police were basically making out that she was a naughty little girl, a naughty tearaway.
And they weren't doing anything about the men?
No, the men were never arrested or anything like that. They just kept bringing Jodie back to me, and they were allowed to carry on. But had they done what they should have done at the beginning when the case came to trial and it was dropped on the case, I've found out since, and this is 110% true, that there are more victims out there, and that Jayden has got a lot of half siblings out there as well, and all in the Stoke-on-Trent area.
It wouldn't surprise me at all. Why were these men not arrested by the police, do you think?
I don't know. Thinking back, I don't know. I suppose this day and age now, they would, but back then, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Is it a racial thing? I don't know, because like I say, there's bad in every race, every what's it. You know, it's not just certain races. So I don't know if back then it could have been a racial thing. I honestly don't know, unless they were scared, unless. I don't know, you hear so many things about cover-ups. Somebody has asked the former CID officer who, through the case, she helped us all the way through, and to be fair, she was exceptional. She came out on the day of the trial to inform us. She's since retired, and we have asked her, not me personally, but somebody on my behalf has asked her to come forward and give like a bit of insight into the case, and she's refused to comment and refused to help, which has shocked me because I had so much respect for that lady. She's a mum herself.
One assumes that she might also be worried, I don't know, about what might happen as a result. Jayden, you suggested earlier that these men, that your father, and I don't think he deserves that title, I don't want to use that word actually, the man who is responsible for what happened to your mother is still at large and in your community?
Yeah, I think it scares me. Yeah, it scares me. Honestly, it scares me that I've got to, like everyone's normal in this household. We all go to work. We all live normal lives, and it scares me that I go to work. I look over my shoulder every day because I don't know who's out there to get me, and it's people might think, oh, I'm not joking. It's scary, and I'm more scared for my family just as well as myself, because these males, they know where my grandparents stay, reside, whatever you want to call it. They're not daft, and I know they are dangerous, because let's be honest, if they weren't dangerous, could they be capable of doing something like that to a woman? I don't think so. I think you have to have something not all there to do something like that to a grown woman. Do you know what I mean? So I think them being in the same area as us just scares us all, because we don't know what's coming or what's around the corner.
I cannot believe, Jayden, for your age, 19 you say, I can't believe your composure and your strength. Listening to you talk now, and the fact that you constantly think about your nan and what she's going through, the maturity and the dignity and the integrity that you have, young man, I'm sorry, it's amazing. It's really quite astonishing. And Ange, to you as well, when you had the humility to talk about this isn't about all people of one race or one community, these are about individuals. The two of you are shining examples of compassion, dignity and strength, and I am so sorry that people have not listened to you, that the authorities have closed the doors on you. And I really hope in some small way that talking today, the bravery it's taken to do this will begin to, I just hope and pray, turn things in the right direction, because the two of you are a credit to yourselves, a credit to each other, a credit to society at large, and I cannot wrap my head around or fathom what you have been through. There are no words, there really aren't. I've got to take a break now, but listen, Jayden, and I really I want to thank you so much for sharing your story and your experience, anything that we can do to shine a light and to help you get that justice, because I think anyone listening to this right now knows that what has happened is so incredibly, despicably vile and wrong, that the perpetrator and perpetrators of this are still living their lives free of the torture that you two are having to bear. thank you for coming on the programme, both of you, and my thoughts and prayers will be with you. Right, we're going to take a short break now. That really was quite astonishing, incredibly moving. It's one of those circumstances where you just think there are no words that can even describe or explain or begin to even compute what we have just listened to. Right, let's gather ourselves. Let's be as strong and as brave as Jaden and Ange and take a break. Stay with me. We're going to be going back to the day's news, but if you want to share your thoughts, your words of support, your prayers, your reaction to what we have just heard, how can we help Jaden and Ange get justice? The number to call 0344499 1000. Use that number to send me a WhatsApp message or leave me a voice note. Text, of course, 87222. Right, talk before your message, and let's all take a deep breath, because that really was a deeply moving interview. Like I said, I'm lost for words. It's not often that I am, but I'm lost for words. So let's take a short break and let's reconvene after this.
Obviously not going to be sustainable. He's going to be asked it until he answers it. Yeah. And at the moment he's still, I think, officially on holiday, but there's not going to be any escaping having to make a statement one way or the other. If I were him, I'd try to get my word out before this Wednesday when it's Prime Minister's questions, or he could be very easily skewered on the issue, even though the Leader of the Opposition isn't brilliant and doesn't have a great track record of catching him out at PMQs. It's an obvious one to bring up, isn't it?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello. Messages are coming in from those of you who've just heard that interview, and I'm just going to read some of these out because I still can't bring myself to being able to form sentences. But in fact, I know what I want to say. I know what I want to do. I know how I feel. And it's bloody hard. Sorry, Ofcom for using the word bloody. Say it again. It's really hard listening to something like that and feeling so powerless that you just want to go out. You want to put things right. You want to do something. The sense of despair and anger and hopelessness, and at the same time fury and confusion. And how is this happening? Giselle says, what an amazing interview. And the young man Jaden and his grandmother, they and other victims have to see justice done. This is no longer a tenable situation. Those who know and should have done better now need to do the right thing. Lisa in Birmingham, Jaden and Ange are remarkable. So incredibly brave. I can't believe what is being allowed to happen to our young white girls at the hands of Pakistani rape gangs. There's no justice. It is sickening. Jodie Sheeran's rapist goes free. Lucy Connolly, 2.5 years for a tweet. Could Maggie Oliver help Jaden and Ange? I just can't speak right now, says Natasha. Tears in my eyes. Darren in Bradford. Very powerful interview. What a brave young man, and the strength of his nan. I was crying too. I hope this story reaches anyone who can help. Melanie from Suffolk. God bless Jaden, says Muriel. Could there be a crowdfund for Jaden and Ange? Can we pass this to the Justice Minister to escalate, asks Lisa. I don't know. Let's see if we can find out. My heart breaks for that poor young man and his nan. That story brought me to tears. I really hope they get the support and justice they deserve. Extraordinary strength and dignity, Steph in the West Midlands. What a fantastic interview of Jaden and Ange. Moved to tears. The horrors these victims faced is unbearable to hear. Shame on Starmer for not holding a nationwide inquiry, says Deborah. Shame on the lot of them. Shame on them all. Jaden and Ange, bless them. She's spearheading. They knew she needs another 17,000 pledges of the 125,000 to take the authorities on, says Johanna in Salisbury. And that's according to Maggie Oliver, who is doing what she can to help. There is, by the way, a small documentary that you can watch on YouTube, Out of the Shadows, Born from Rape is the name of that documentary. I do hope actually anyone listening to this goes and watches it and really learns about this story, and that perhaps we can get together and do something, anything, I don't know. God bless Jaden, Muriel. Vic from Barnsley, just want to say how moving that was. Jaden and Ange are a credit. Tearful. The police and the CPS need a bomb under their backsides. It's a polite way of putting it. Right. Okay. There's other news and more stories to cover. It's going to take a while for that one to sink in. But let's talk about what has been the main international news story of the day. And that is the death of Pope Francis at the age of 88. Let's speak to John Hooper, who is the Italy and Vatican correspondent for The Economist. John, thank you so much for joining me. We're having to do a bit of a handbrake, turn and vault fast when it comes to talking from one subject to the next. But talk to me about now what is going on in the Vatican after the death of a pope. This is a huge, massive international event. There's a lot of ritual, there's a lot of protocol surrounding what happens now and over the coming days. Walk us through it.
Well, what's been happening this evening, just within an hour of our interview, is that the official in the Vatican who is entrusted with the first moves that follow the death of a pope officiated at a ceremony in the guest house where Pope Francis lived on the first floor in a two-room suite, deliberately chosen to emphasize that he didn't want a rich church. In there, the Camerlengo, as he's called, an Irish-American cardinal, presided over the rite of establishing that the Pope was dead, accompanied by a doctor and other nominated officials. In the old days, it was done by thwacking the poor chap on the head 3 times with a silver hammer to make sure that he was dead. This time it's done, these days it's done with a death certificate. And at the end of that ceremony, there is a kind of a timetable that begins. The first move will be tomorrow, when the cardinals who've already reached the Vatican will assemble and will agree on a date for the lying in state, which looks as though it's going to be starting on Wednesday, and will then take over the running of the ordinary business of the church as others arrive in Rome, because that is also a peculiarity of this particular time, in that Pope Francis appointed cardinals from a long way away. There will be one coming in from the capital of Mongolia, another one from Tonga out in the Pacific. So it'll take some time for them to assemble. And then we have the funeral of the Pope, which it has to take place normally between 4 and 6 days after his death. So it's going to be this weekend. After that, we are then waiting for the election of the Pope, which will probably now take place that about sort of between 10 and 15 to 20 days rather after the death.
It's a very, I don't know if secretive is the right word, but it's a very sort of shrouded negotiation that happens to determine who will follow in the footsteps of a deceased pope, and how long that takes with those conversations is anybody's guess. But do you have any insight into the sort of things that are discussed? What sort of back and forth and, you know, toing and froing is going on in those extremely private conversations?
Yes, there is an established method for doing this. 2 eminent clerics are brought in to address the cardinals about the issues that are facing the church. And that's really the procedure. First of all, to look at what is the dominant theme that they need to focus on. And then from there, start thinking about which of the cardinals would make the best pope to confront that particular issue. And to give an example, the idea that was formed before the election of Pope Benedict was that the big issue was the evangelization or re-evangelization of Europe, and therefore they needed a European pope, and they lighted on the German cardinal, as he then was, Ratzinger. So that's what they're going to be discussing above all in these informal discussions, they're called congregations, that take place before the conclave, which is, as you said, very much a private affair. The word itself means with key, and they are locked into the Sistine Chapel. In the old days, they were locked in there 24 hours a day until they came up with a decision. And now it's a little bit more civilized because they're bussed back to the the Vatican's guest house to spend the night, but very much cut off from the rest of the world only talking among themselves.
What do you think? I'm fascinated to hear you talking about the contextualisation of what is the big sort of thematic, main issue, the kernel of what the Catholic Church is having to face, and who's going to be the best person to deal with that. Already, when we're looking at newspaper reports in the United Kingdom over the runners and the riders, for want of a better phrase, it seems to me the fulcrum around which the debate about who should succeed is sort of hinged is this idea of the fight between a sort of progressive liberal Catholic Church, which is trying to mould itself into the structures that are now sort of represented within society, the progressivism, let's call it, and then those who say, well, actually, perhaps we've reached a tipping point and the Catholic Church shouldn't be having to bend and scrape according to some sort of neo-ideologies imposed from Lord knows where, but should be standing up for the fundamental values of the Christian faith. Do you think that is going to be the dividing issue here when one looks at who should succeed as the next pope, whether essentially he is a Catholic or a sort of change-making pope?
Well, I think that one thing we can say is that the next pope will be a Catholic.
So I meant a conservative. So what's he conservative? As soon as I said it, I realised I'd used the wrong word.
But having said that, I think that the duality that you have just summarised is definitely going to be running right the way through this conclave, because Francis, by his more open approach, has created enemies within the church, has created critics, and there will be that continuing standoff between liberals and conservatives, undoubtedly. But I don't think that that is going to be the kind of theme that they will latch onto. Right. They will be thinking about such issues as whether, for example, the big issue now is the rise of China and what needs to be done for that, in which case they might opt for an Asian pope. They may be thinking in terms of the division between the rich north, global north, and the poorer global south. And there are other theological issues that they may decide are more important. For example, whether the church in future should be ruled in the way that Francis had initially promised, with much more respect given to the opinions of the bishops and archbishops out in the field. That kind of issue might be what they light upon and then decide this is what we've got to go for, and therefore the man that we need is X or Y. They think about these things in a different way to the way that journalists like ourselves think about them.
No doubt. And it's interesting. I think a lot of the world will probably be looking upon the election, if that's the right word, of the next pope as a sort of marker of where we are at, perhaps in the West, in the world as a whole, when it comes to that sort of tug of war between conservatism and progressivism, for want of a better phrase. John Hooper, thank you ever so much, a Vatican correspondent for The Economist. I walked myself into a joke there, didn't I, as the Pope a Catholic? You bet you believe it. John Hooper, ironically, was a bishop back in the day in Gloucester, who Mary I had put to his death because he was not a Catholic, ironically. Little historical factoid for you there, apropos of nothing whatsoever. We're going to take a short break now. If you want to get in touch and give me your thoughts on anything we've been talking about today, 0344499 1000 is the number to call. You can also send a WhatsApp to that number. If you'd like to text, it's 87222. Put talk before your message. And back after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Guys, the incoming after that interview of Jayden and Ange, it's incredible. I'm just going to read some of your messages because there's just so many here. I've only just tuned in. I caught some of what Jayden was saying, and you're obviously upset. Can you tell us what happened? Well, I could do, but I'd have to redo the whole segment. So why don't you catch up, indeed, on our Talk app? Watch it back on YouTube. Too much to get into now. You'll have to go and find that out for yourself. Alex, a moving interview of Jayden and Ange. One question: who was DPP at the time? Asks Michael in Norfolk. I know what you're getting at there, Michael. And well, I don't know. I'm not going to jump to conclusions. Oh, Rachel Halliwell's messaged me. I know, Rachel. I love you, Rachel. You know I love you. I absolutely understand the pain and the grief and the fight for justice. My daughter was groomed and raped and killed herself at 12. Samina was failed by the authorities. I understand this family's fight for accountability and justice. We fight for our children, and if that means speaking out on social media to get their stories heard, then we shouldn't feel afraid or bullied into keeping silent. Rachel, you're amazing. You know I love you, girl. You know I love you. God bless Jayden. Someone else says, hi Alex, could there be a crowd fund for Jayden and Ange? Can we pass this to the Justice Minister to escalate? My heart breaks for that poor young man and his nan. The story brought me to tears. My heart goes out to Jayden and his nan. I only caught the last bit of the interview. If they can't get justice, I'll gladly chuck the perpetrators in the back of my van and deliver them some justice. Lee from Bristol. Do you know, there's this burning anger inside me that it oh God, I'll be sent to jail for saying what I was about to say, so I better not. But, you know, you when you hear something like that and you feel powerless and you know that the authorities aren't doing anything. Oh my goodness, Alex, I'm in tears after your chat with Jayden and Ange. What thoroughly brave and beautiful human beings. I sincerely hope those responsible will be brought to justice with a capital J. How can we help those two beautiful people get justice? Surely there's a way, asks Pamela. Alex, my wife and I are very worried about the safety of Jayden and his nan. Your interview needs to be shown to all MPs and see if the cowards will now do something, says John. I'd be amazed if even 3% of them wake up from their vain lethargy and get their backsides into gear. Alex, I've cried my way through your interview of Jayden and Ange. What an amazing young man. I'm a mum. I have 2 girls in their 20s. I'll not let them go to London or use London transport. They both drive, yet I drop and pick them up for safety. What has gone on in our country? The attack against our children is barbaric. I have nightmares. It's horrific. Authorities, I agree with this, authorities need to be held to account. These racist attacks against British girls. Are people still afraid? Enough is enough. Why is it that people in the public sector just carry on in their jobs? They get golden handshakes when they have failed so miserably that people have died as a result of their abrogation of duty. What a moment that was. Truly powerful, deeply moving, impossible to forget. Jayden, your courage and strength shine brighter than words can say. I know I felt that as well. What a remarkable young man. Ange, the love and pride in your eyes was the kind that moves hearts across the nation. I agree. Let's crowdfund it. It'd be a great idea. Tearful we all are. Thank you, Alex, for bringing such important reality to us. It's very worrying to think that once these people were called the minorities and now they're practically exempt from the law. There's so many more. I mean, again, if someone just said, I'm so angry, I'm a big guy. If this happened to my family, I'd be on a lifer. This is when you think, when people got so angry and upset about what happened in this country and you just feel like there's nothing you can do. Helena says, I'm happy to donate legal fees. Surely it's an open shut case of rape. She was 14. They have the DNA. I'm still crying. Someone else says, I'm still crying, I'm raging. Who is the chief constable who said, let it go? We need to know. These are beautiful people. They need their justice. There's so many. I really can't read them all. Let's speak now to Jason, who's in Sheffield. Hi, Jason. Hi, Jason. So I think they all thought we were going to go to an advert break now, and I've called their bluff rather. We haven't got long, but let me know. What are your thoughts, Jason?
It's about the prosecution of people who were who are desecrating the statues.
Right, yeah, this is the sort of Trans Lives Matter who, you know, graffitied.
Yeah, all that rubbish.
All that rubbish, yeah.
But it's never going... Prosecutions will never happen. Do you know why?
Why?
Because the precedent has already been set, because the courts threw out, or shall I say, let off the people who threw Colston's statue into the river. So that precedent set.
Well, I can't remember what happened with the Colston statue thing in Birmingham. First of all, it's thrown out, but then wasn't there some sort of retrial? I can't keep up with it. But the point of it is this. I think the precedent was set during the whole BLM nonsense, where police were taken to the knee from some confected faux outrage about a black criminal who died over in America and nothing to do with us. I always say this. Oh, we're such a racist country. There's so much violence against black people. Tell me about the last time you heard of a racist attack in the UK. Because I can't even name one. And I mean, apart from, of course, Stephen Lawrence, which was about 30 years ago now. And you think if we were going around and, you know, people of colour had to live in such terror, we'd have the names of the victims and the perpetrators constantly. And for me, the breaking point was when, instead of standing and defending the statue of Winston Churchill, was routinely being attacked by this grotesque mob, we boarded it up. As if out of shame.
Yeah. Board it up.
Spineless.
Board it up and protect it.
Yeah, exactly. It set a dangerous precedent. Jason, darling, I've got to go to the advert break because I'm way over my time limit. Thank you ever so much. Right, on that note, I'll see you after this.
Breaking news this morning, Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, has died. The Vatican said in a video statement on Monday morning. He was 88 and had suffered various ailments in his 12-year papacy, most recently suffering from a pneumonia, which caused him to be hospitalised for several days, at some points being said to have been very, very close to death. We saw him out in public only yesterday. You can look at those pictures here. He met with J.D. Vance just the other day.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Breaking news! Ed Miliband's a nutter. There you go. That's the title of this next segment. I'm joined now by Mark Francois, Conservative MP for Rayleigh and Wickford. I mean, Mark, delusional Ed Miliband slammed after ploughing on with Labour's net zero push that will raise bills. I mean, we only had to see that video of him standing in a Wimbledon field playing his ukulele like someone who's just straight out of care and probably should be straight-jacketed and sent back to the nearest mental institute to know that the net zero minister is going to hell in a handcart and taking the country with it. But he, after everything going on, he just seems to think that the UK needs to save the world at the expense of, guess what, the UK.
Well, good evening, Alex.
Good evening.
Yeah, to back up what you've said, if you look at global emissions, by definition, it's a global problem. The UK is responsible for approximately 1% of total global emissions. If you compare us to China, depending on which analyst you believe, they're responsible for about 30 to 35%. So call it a third for cash. The other major emitters are the US, India, and Brazil. So even if we were to close down the entire British economy and barely emit anything at all, that would still barely scratch the problem of overall global warming. So that doesn't mean we shouldn't, in a British way, do our bit, but it certainly does mean we shouldn't sacrifice all of our heavy industry in this country because Ed Miliband is, well, you put it one way, I'll just call him a zealot.
Yeah, zealot, nutter, potato, potato. The thing is this, though, it seems to me that this ridiculous Labour government, and talking about the statistics you're mentioning there, and China being approximately responsible for a third of global emissions, that's because they're churning out CO2, making all the sorts of, net zero stuff, paraphernalia, that this government are writing a blank charity cheque to Beijing for giving us. It seems not only is it good enough for us to self-flagellate to the point of being totally flayed to the bone at the altar of net zero, they are obsessed with China doing this job for them, and China are rubbing their hands together with glee going, great, you're destroying your own economy and building ours.
Well, it's worse than that, because as part of their economic development, China are still opening at least one new coal-fired power station a month. Some months they open two. So, we're being given virtue lectures by Miliband about how we should, if you like, put on a hair shirt. China, the largest emitter in the world, is building and opening new coal-fired power stations. So, and on top of the moral necessity to challenge that, there's also the strategic point that not only is he obsessed, and I mean the word deliberately, with renewables, but Ed, if the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing, that doesn't work so well. They're also banning us, or trying to ban us, from further development of oil and gas resources in the North Sea, which is even more bonkers, particularly given the strategic situation. And you've seen how Putin has tried to use the gas weapon since the full-blown invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022. So not only is this just massive virtue signalling by Red Ed, as it used to be known, it also makes no sense strategically. And at a very human level, why should my constituents in Rayleigh and Wickford have to pay 15 grand to rip out a perfectly working gas central heating system in order to install an air source heat pump, which is thermally inefficient and it often, after about 6 months of operation, extremely noisy, just to make Ed Miliband feel better?
Mark, it's the most sick vanity project. We know this government are absolutely tonto. They haven't even said anything about the Supreme Court ruling. Even our security services are warning us about the sort of tech China might be putting in their EV vehicles. Make it make sense. Right, we're going to take a break now. Don't go anywhere. Back after this.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the show. Alex Phillips with you until 10 o'clock. We have had a, wow, I don't even know what the right word is to describe this show. We've had a blimmin' show, haven't we? And most importantly, we spoke to Jayden and Anne Sheeran. If you missed that at 8 o'clock, go back and watch it. I'm not just saying that for the clicks and the wins. I'm saying it because I've never had so much of a hot response to anything I've talked about on this show. How just... I don't know. There's no words. You can't say it was a moving interview, devastated. It feels like the English language does not have enough vocabulary to be able to remotely frame that interview and what they were talking to us about. If you missed it, brief synopsis. Jayden, son of Jody, raped at the age of 14 by a Pakistani grooming gang. They have the DNA. They have the evidence. Jody, her life destroyed as a result of this. Died. Jayden, brought up by Jody's mum, his grandma Ange. All they want is justice, because the perpetrator of that vile crime is just living at large in Stoke. All of his freedoms, all of his rights, and they're worried for their own safety and their own lives by other people in this grooming gang. Jayden, the son of that unhuman, bestial, evil act. And she lost her daughter, and all they want is the man who did this to face some sort of punishment. That's it. And you think, you know, the police are like, oh, well, do you really want to bring this up? People might be unkind to you. Well, you know, could be dangerous. No! Do something, for crying out loud. Do something. Just going to pick up on some of the messages. Kaz from Bedford says something really interesting. Your interview with Jayden and Anne should be compulsory viewing instead of the bandwagon adolescence that Sir Keir Starmer jumped upon. That fictional nonsense we were told was some sort of documentary representing how 13-year-old little white boys on the internet, brought up in happy homes, white working class families, they're the danger against women. Get on! Get on! Do you think we're mugs? Do you think that we don't see that what you're trying to do is divert us away from the real story, which is the one that we just heard and countless other disgusting, unsolved crimes of that kind, where no one's been brought to justice, no national inquiry has been had. Instead, no, let's watch some fictional Netflix rubbish about something which, if this was happening every day up and down the country, we would have heard about it, because it suits the authorities when the perpetrator is white and working class, because there you go. Those people, they can be chased after, they can be persecuted, they can be imprisoned. But that's not what's going on here, is it? We all know that. We're not mugs. We're not stupid. We know what you're doing. Sickos. Right. Let's speak now to Peter Barnes, one of my favourites. Haven't spoken to Peter for a while. Peter, how are you, my darling?
I'm doing all right, Alex, but it sounds like you have had quite the show, and that story is absolutely horrific. Absolutely horrific.
There's no words, are there?
Absolutely none.
I can't even put it into sentences.
I cannot believe. No, this is the thing. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm sick to death of rather hearing about them. And yet we are powerless to do anything about them because the government and the political establishment has turned their backs. That is the only explanation here. They don't want to talk about it. We're seeing the consequences of identity politics right here. And the reason, but by the way, that they fuss over adolescents is to absolve them of their guilt, because they turned their backs on this issue, so they need to kick up a fuss about something they think they can fix. That is what it is. It's about absolving themselves and halo polishing. They couldn't care less about safety of girls or anything like that. They just need to make themselves feel better, and I'm bored to the back teeth of it. And trust me, I've got incredible toothache right now.
I feel vengeful, and I've got to be careful what I say. But the rage within me, I don't quite know where to put it. If I'm honest with you,
it feels palpable. It feels palpable, the anger in this country. It's just like you said. Are they trying to make us out like idiots? Do they think we can't see what's in front of us?
Right, and they troll us. They're not happy with making us feel powerless, with making us so angry that there's nothing we can do, straitjacketed, gaslit, demonised in our own country for the audacity of just being from here, born here, wanting to believe in it, wanting to support it. They make us into the monsters. And they're trolling us right now. But before we go on to illegal migrant camps, because my blood, really, I don't know how much more it can boil without my skull splattering over the walls of this studio. The pro-Gaza MP, Ayub Khan, has branded the grooming gang scandal as a false right-wing narrative. You disgusting, vile, shallow, spineless, malevolent, nasty, little, unpatriotic demon. How dare you? Ooh.
The idea that those people get to sit in our parliament is a disgrace to our democracy. And it's about time people woke up to that fact. They blocked second cousin marriages. This government is paralysed with fear about, offending this community because it needs the vote. It is craven and everything wrong. We cannot fix these problems with this government because they are in bed with them, because they've turned their backs, looked the other way, and now consequences have come back round when they've got into power. And all the local authorities have begged to Keir Starmer, please don't look into us, because we're going to be the ones that's going to prison. And Keir Starmer, do not forget, sat at the top of as DPP while all of this went on. He can say whatever he likes about, I prostituted computed the first case. He left a post-it note on the desk on the way out. That is his legacy on this issue. He's turned his back on so many major issues. I've started calling him a submarine because he just disappears underwater the minute anything gets a little bit choppy. There is a clear pattern there, from Jimmy Savile to the grooming gangs to everything. Right. Anything politically dicey, he is nowhere to be seen, and it's about time he was called out for that.
Well, he's had nothing to say, has he? Cat's got his tongue since the Supreme Court have decided that, guess what?
He's too busy on holiday now out the country.
He's pathetic. He's a big bozo. There's many better words than that, but, off comp.
Yeah, we can't say those.
If you and I, Peter, if you and I decided we wanted to get a little group of us together outside the cathedral in Westminster, that beacon of Christianity and Catholicism in our capital city, over the Easter period, and conduct some sort of lectures about, from the book of Roger Scruton, and talk about the wonderful nature of Britain and how important Christianity is to it, and we put some tents up, do you reckon we'd have been allowed to stay there?
I think we'd have been bounced out before the first peg hit the floor. That's the reality of it.
Right. So does it surprise you though that it wasn't me and you and the Catholics of this country at Easter outside Westminster Cathedral? No, there are a load of men peeing there, sleeping on the floor, in tents, all over the flower beds. And guess what they were? Illegal migrants. Of course, they get to stay. They get to defile our streets, our gardens, our beautiful public buildings. They don't get moved on because, what, they're some sort of beatified brave men who have broken the law, broken into this country somehow. I mean, if these people were so poor, if they were so deprived and down and impoverished, I'm not saying they haven't gone through perilous journeys and they don't come from rubbish countries, but if they really were the poorest of the poor and the weakest of the weaks, how do they afford the thousands of pounds they give to the people traffickers?
Well, the reality is they don't. They end up working in illegal markets over here, again, selling drugs, committing crime, making our streets unsafe. That's how they pay it back. It's a full circle and full service, package that these people smugglers offer to them. And unfortunately, yes, again, it is the native people of this country that have to sit there and be quiet because otherwise you're a racist or you're a xenophobe or you're this or you're that or something or you're other. And basically, it's shut up and be quiet and just hand over some money. And do you know what? There's going to get to this point now with all these stories that there is going to be a snapping point. And it's not. It's going to make the summer riots look like child's play. And, the crackdown on that will be more significant, yet again fueling the problem. Because, yes, this government will not admit that it is a part and parcel of the problem and refuses to do anything to fix it. I mean, this story is staggering, but just to wind it back a moment, can we just all agree that the stain of homelessness in this country is morally just there are no words to describe it. Over 354,000 homeless people in England alone. 161,000 are children, and over nearly 6% of that are veterans. How is that possible? Right. We're the seventh largest economy in the world.
But this is the mad thing. During COVID, it was deemed that the homeless men and women of this country were a public health crisis. So they all had to be put in hotels. Good, they're our people. Yeah. We live in a society, we're a developed world. We have a moral backbone to our society. We've got a welfare system. If our people, I don't care if they've come from trauma or have taken drugs, they're ours. We should be looking after them. That is what a decent, civilised society does. And during COVID, we put them in hotels. And now we've washed our hands of them. We've turned our backs because people who want to lord it up in a 4-star hotel, delivering food on the black market for their extra money, putting their videos on TikTok, with their pound notes, look at my life, isn't it great? Here's me doing a rap video. You get on a boat too. You can get a PlayStation, live in a hotel. I don't like the meals. I've got no Wi-Fi. They get the red carpet rolled out. Anyone who is our duty to care for is just left to rot.
Yeah. And that's the great word for it, left to rot. Because let's not forget, even though they get given all this stuff, they still kick up a fuss. Because don't forget, back in June 2023, there was a huge kind of walkout in the hotels in Pimlico, a particularly expensive part of London, I would mind, where they said that the rooms weren't adequate enough. There's a series of hotel rooms that cost the taxpayer over £54,000 a year just to keep a migrant in it. And I don't expect in grovelling hands and knees, thank you, because, again, we're a decent country, we have morals, and it's what we do. However, a little bit of, thanks, wouldn't go a long way. And decency and respect is what I demand, because the way they behaved outside of that church, could you imagine the outcry if it was, a more right-wing leaning group outside of a mosque? Could you imagine? We'd have been having a very different conversation right now. We'd be talking about people and prison sentences.
But you know what the left would say?
That is the reality of it.
You know what the left would say, though, Peter? The left would say that we are scapegoating migrants, that we're xenophobes, that these are poor men who all they're trying to do is find themselves a better life, and we're not being good enough, which is why they've had to resort to essentially sleeping rough. That's what they'd say that we're doing, that we're the monsters here, that we're trying to stir up and incite hatred and division in our society. But the thing is, right, regardless of whether that's someone's opinion or not, what we have seen in other countries, in Ireland, in America, where one tent becomes 10 tent, becomes a street of tent, becomes these tent cities, is guess what? It does lead to insurrection. It does lead to people going, this is enough. I don't want to walk down the street of this fair city that I used to call home, that my ancestors built, and have to go past this every day. This is not what a functioning society looks like. I've got no power to do anything about it. So whether one comes down on the side of sympathy, or whether one comes down on the side of I'm fed up of people who can just break into a country at will and just, you know, set up shop here, doesn't matter. The point is, the pragmatic point is, a lot of people in society are so sick to the back teeth that this is going to escalate into far bigger problems, and no one's doing anything about it.
I mean, those problems are already on our doorstep. Social cohesion has probably never been at its lowest. But let's look at the actual cost of this. It's estimated, with additional services and things, to £234 billion. Do you know, this entire migrant crisis will have cost the UK, when you add it all together. What? That is insanity. Absolute insanity. You know, that is more than we're spending on education. That is, you know, we've got a defence problem. We've got so many issues in this country of infrastructure is crumbling, services falling apart, councils going bust, and literal garbage on the streets. And yet we've got to give more, give more, give more. Well, I'm sorry, the pips have squeaked. That's the reality. And like you said, this is going to lead to a real problem with violence on the street like I don't think we'll have seen in a very, very long time, probably before I was even born. And it will be of the government's own making, because it is the consistent gaslighting that, you know, what you're seeing isn't what you're seeing. That infuriates people, and it infuriates me. And I tell you now, it is incredible what we see, and it's got to stop. It has to stop. For the safety of the nation, the government has to get a grip on this issue. Otherwise, we're in for a lot of trouble.
I don't understand, I really don't, that, you know, if people break into this country, if they've got the money to have mobile phones and pay people on TikTok and people traffickers loads of money to get in a boat or come over to work in the black market, they're criminals. It's very simple to me. They're just criminals. Yeah. I don't understand.
When they do this act, they're a criminal.
Right. I don't understand why. The maximum we should do is turn around and go, big old migrant camp. You get a bunk bed. That's it. In a room of about 20 of you, you get tagged. You don't get to leave. You don't get to go about. You don't get to work in the black market. No PlayStations, no driving lessons, no tickets to football matches, no buses to the nearby town so you can loiter about and harass women. Nothing. If you're really escaping persecution, if you are really so desperate that you've had to traipse through multiple different countries where you could have found refuge to get here, then you should be just blimmin' pleased that you have some sort of shelter, and that's it.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. 100%. But that's not these people. But we keep thinking that they're coming from war-torn nations and, you know, that they're fleeing all this persecution. The reality is they're economic migrants looking for a better job. And the reason, by the way, as me and you talk about this all the time, that there is no jobs where they're coming from is because people support the European Union and the customs union that keep these countries down, that only fuels the crisis. So it is incredible to me that they cannot see what is in front of them, because, and I go back to this point, it is about absolving themselves of responsibility.
Right.
They cannot admit that they created this crisis. It has to be something else, because they're the right ones, not the wrong ones. They live in such a dichotomy that they can't consider it.
I want to wind back on something you just said, because it's something I've been saying for Lord knows how long, right, about the customs union, the EU, and people go, oh, well, here it comes, it's all new Brexit, EU. No, it is, because, Peter, you're absolutely right. What the EU have done is trample all over the developing world like neo-colonialists. They have locked countries in Africa in agrarian toil, so big multinational lobbyists can get the cheapest possible ingredients for their tea bags, for their coffee, for their hot chocolate, without having to give a single grey-collar job to a single poor person. And the last president of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, made this astonishing speech to Macron when he was first elected, saying, do you want to know why so many men are getting into small boats and coming over to France? We don't want your handouts. We don't want your aid. We want to be treated like a sensible economy. We just want to be cooperated with, not basically pillaged at the altar of multinational companies who just care about the bottom line. And actually, Brexit was the opportunity for this country to have proper trade deals with nations such as Ghana, our Commonwealth cousins who we have a duty of care towards, to nations like Kenya, where we buy pretty much all of our tea, to say, hey, I know, rather than letting the Unilevers of this world demand that they can get tea bags tariff-free, or tea tariff-free rather, to ship over to Eastern Europe to be put in bags to then be shipped to the UK. How about actually we give Kenyans the dignity of having the factories and the processing plants and the HR and the engineering and the trade delegates and all the other things that come if you actually allow commerce to operate properly, which would make tea far less expensive for us and put money in the back pockets of everyday Kenyans rather than constantly locking them in poverty. And you're absolutely right. People don't understand that particular narrative. And Britain had a brilliant opportunity to begin to move the needle when it came to global poverty by actually doing trade differently. And we didn't. And instead, we've allowed ourselves to be played by multinational criminal gangs whose illicit industry is worth billions more than the international drugs trade, who are often used or weaponized, if not actually put in place for making money by terrorist organizations, mercenary groups and hostile states. We're essentially being played for fools. And this weak, lily-livered, feeble government who are so vainglorious and so venal, all they care about is their self-image with their sort of leafy dinner party, fellow middle-class bleeding hearters, that they actually allow this country to be driven to the dogs when the right thing to do, actually, would be making sure the terrorist organisations weren't being funded by people trafficking. And this is another point that people don't understand. The people trafficking, when it begins in the state of origin and the thousands of pounds are paid there, do you know why you see so many young men on those boats? Because when families leave, the women are plucked off because they're sold into domestic servitude or sex trafficked. Women don't make it to the end stage. Oh no, the fate for them is much, much worse. And do you know why you don't see many young people, many young girls, young boys, teenagers, young teenagers? Because a lot of them are plucked off and used for organ harvesting. So do you know what? Stopping it might be a blimmin' good idea, because what happens at the origin source of these vile, inhumane, devilish people trafficking gangs is not even worth thinking about. And the more we allow these people to come in and the more we line the pockets of these satanic creatures who profit from it, the more we are enabling the perpetration of horrors around the world. Peter's clapping. I had to do my sort of subtitles there, audio.
There was no verbal response to that other than yes. Because, again, these people think they're the good ones. And I'm sorry, you are the villains of this story, or one of many villains in this story. Because you are... just everything you've just said there should be literally put in front of these people as a TV series. Make it by Netflix if they're that desperate.
Oh, call it Adolescence.
Oh, God. The idea that you have to watch that TV show is preposterous to me. But everything you've just said there, Alex, is bang on. Because, we talk about, it's young men of fighting age and all that kind of stuff. But, yes, we never talk about, well, where are the women? Where are the kids? We don't talk about that because that's the really awkward thing. This government's idea of smashing the gangs is the single dumbest idea I have ever heard.
How about taking the trade away from the gangs?
Yes, exactly. Well, you want to know why the economy is in such a mess? They don't understand supply and demand.
Right.
I mean, it kind of comes full circle, doesn't it? This is absolutely obscene to me that what is common sense to literally most people in this country, is baffling to them. Or I go back to this point, it's about absolving themselves because the chickens have come home to roost in 2025, whether it be the Supreme Court decision on the trans stuff, Donald Trump in the White House. Let's be real, 55% of UK households are now in receipt of a state form of benefit, and with a mass exodus of asset wealthy individuals, who's got to cover that gap? I tell you what, the pips have squeaked over here. So, where's that money coming from? This might be the major turning point for so many of these issues. And it's not because of moral reasons. It's because somebody's got to pay for it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this government is delivering no real growth, no matter what Rachel Reeves is running around saying. The last growth figures were because of a drop in oil prices. That is basic economics, something she doesn't understand. And it is staggering to me that We can't get rid of them. We can't get rid of them. It's just... there are no words.
There are
Alex.
no words.
There are
It's
no
infuriating.
words.
It's infuriating. I mean, they are going to be gotten rid of. I have no doubt that there's no way they're going to be forming the next government in 2029 because the chickens have come home to roost. People cannot actually prevent the scales from falling away from their eyes now. We can see what's going on. There's a movement spreading throughout the United Kingdom, actually across the entire West. Everywhere you look in the Western world, people are rejecting these globalist numpties who have done nothing but try and destroy our civilization, who have set fire to common sense, gotten rid of our dignity, thought women and girls is politically expedient to just throw them to the wolves. And yet what would be politically expedient, which would be closing borders and rejecting people breaking into the country, they're not doing. And you have to ask yourself, what is their motivation? What is their agenda? Are they really just stupid? Are they just stupid? Or is there something else going on?
I think there's something else going on, and I think they use these issues as political battering rams to break down the most fundamental thing that holds a society together, the truth. That is what we are seeing. Every one of these issues is an attack on truth. It is, you're not seeing what's in front of you, we will tell you what you are seeing. That is a very dangerous place for the world to be. Luckily, we seem to be turning a corner. Look at this Supreme Court decision. The exact same people who are now denying science, by the way, which is what you're doing by not accepting that ruling, were absolutely horrific to people over COVID who had actual legitimate concerns, you know, about lockdown, about masks. But no, they were anti-science. But you're doing the same thing, but you're doing it because people's feelings. You're doing it because you want to care. You're not. Most of the time, it's not your opinion to begin with. You know, we had the largest gathering of science deniers over the Easter weekend in Westminster, you know, to ironically campaign against the Supreme Court, who over the Brexit year said that if we dare challenge the courts, society will break down. Look at how that narrative went clean out the window the moment a decision went against them. I mean, the reaction to that is very telling, very, very telling. But it's indicative of everything that we're seeing in the UK right now. And I really hope that the West can save itself. Ayana Hirsi Ali, who's an actual human rights lawyer,
legend,
campaigner. Sorry, she said something terrifying. I heard in an interview she gave, and she was asked, "What's the thing that keeps her up at night?" The fall of Europe. And she says that we've never been closer. Sweden has already admitted it has no control over the violence. Germany is basically that way. We're holding on by a knife's edge at this point, for want of a much better phrase. It is absolutely astounding to me. We're seeing it in Ireland. We're seeing it right around Europe. Look at France. Look at, you know, it's terrifying.
And you know what? I thought that things were bad, but it's amazing.
Sorry,
every day you wake up and you realise quite how tenuous our grip on our past is. Peter, I've got to go to an advert break now. I mean, I don't know what that was. It is like proper catharsis having you on. At least you've got to boil off some steam, because I had sort of almost run out of it. After this show, I'm going to flop like a bag of waste on the floor. I've sort of everything, all my passions have come out. There's going to be nothing left to give. Oh, Peter Barnsley, I love you to bits. Thank you so much for being so direct and just, you know, telling it like it is. You are an absolute god. Right. On that note, we're going to take a short break. And like I said, honestly, when you do this, it's a funny old job, this one. Sitting in this little room, you know, I can almost touch the wall on that side and touch the wall on that side. You might think it's some sort of grandiose studio, but if the camera could swoop around, I've got like a computer screen here of your messages, and one here where Samara tells me what I'm supposed to be doing and when I'm supposed to be going to advert break. Oh yeah, 9:19. That didn't go according to plan, did it? Only about 10 minutes too late for that, but never mind. But you sit here by yourself and you talk for 3 hours and you sort of, you know, discuss all the news stories. And today's show has been a real roller coaster. I mean, the anger, the fury, the passions, the disbelief. And I tell you what, when I get home, I just literally become like a nothing on my sofa. I'm like I don't know, melted Play-Doh. It all just like, you know, it all comes out of you. And then I kind of need scraping up like roadkill when the clock hits 10 o'clock. And that is why here's an appeal to you listening to this show. We've got half an hour to go, and I want you to help me fill it. That's right. I want you to vent. I want you to throw in your opinions. I want you to give me the opportunity to sit back and take a breath, because, dear Lord, I think I need it. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to talk to me, to let me know what you think about everything we've been discussing on this show. It's your standard network rate. Go on, do a girl a favour. Give me a helping hand, won't you? You can send me a WhatsApp on that same number, 03444991000, or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. 8722 is the number to send a text message. Write talk before your message. That way it pings the masts on top of Talk Towers and wends its way down into this here studio so I can read it. Joanna in Salisbury says, hi Alex, take a breath. Right, that's what I'm going to do. And when I come back, I hope that you guys are going to help me out. See you in a mo.
I really don't think Donald Trump cares a lot about the killing. I think he wants two things. I think he wants monetary return for the United States, and he wants to get this war out of the way, and he has made it very, very clear so we can get back to normal trading with Russia, and he has already talked about himself, about the US and Russia dividing up the European market to sell their oil and gas to.
Yeah.
So I think nobody knows what goes on inside Donald Trump's head but Donald Trump, but that is my assessment, Mike.
Yes, indeed.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, you lovely things. Let's get through some of your messages, shall we? Phil in Portsmouth, what a fantastic piece of journalism you showed tonight. Well, I think I just spoke. I was just a human having a conversation. Talking to Jaden and Ange moved me to tears. They're the fantastic ones. He basically, Phil says this needs to be explored more rigorously. The reason why the police don't care is politics, pure and simple. Something needs to be done. It really does. It just beggars belief, doesn't it? That these things happen, and then people like Jaden and Ange are told, well, you know, you sure you want to kick up a fuss? There's nothing we can do. The CPS has dropped the case. Why? Why? It's black and white. It's closed book, isn't it? An open and closed book. That you know, got the DNA evidence. I listened to your interview, Jaden and Ange. I'm so sad and angry for the family. I hope the interview will be repeated. Well, let's see about that. Lindsay's message saying, for those in the country who have not yet been affected by the migrant crisis, Newcastle is living and breathing it. We are not safe and nobody cares. And Lindsay has sent me a video of what appears to be a man of foreign descent who appears to be naked on some sort of, like, with some tiny little bit of cloth over him, writhing around on some grass. Where is that, Linz? I used to live in Newcastle. Oh, what is going on with the world? Alex, I'm so glad these stories are given light. But sadly, you only have to look online for hundreds of videos of foreign men captured by vigilante heroes who think it's okay to groom young girls online. It's gone too far. We need strong action now. After Alex's asylum anarchy speech, Alex for Prime Minister of the UK, says Len in Abergele in North Wales. Not sure I want that job. I'll tell you what, though, Len, what I've been told by various people who have held that job, one in particular, is there's not much you can do. There's so many quangos now. The Bank of England does what it wants to do. The OBR does what it wants to do. All these various quangos do what they want to do. The markets will decide this. The judiciary decides that. Supreme Court that. The ECHR this. The UN that. The EU that. Even though we're not a member anymore, we're still basically at the whip hand of that monster. And then, even if you manage to get through all of those hurdles, the civil service are completely intransigent. And essentially being Prime Minister is just being some sort of puppet. It's some sort of fake showman at the front. And if you want to really take control of this country and start presiding over it properly, you'd need to get rid of all of those things. That's right, you need to get rid of the Human Rights Act. You need to leave the ECHR. You probably should bin off the UN while you're at it and all of its various bodies. You should even get rid of the Supreme Court. Oh, international prayer, that will make you autocratic nation. No, that would just make a country that governs itself. Wouldn't that be a turn up for the books? Let's speak to Del, who is in Glasgow. Hi, Del.
Hiya, how you doing?
Well, I'm all right. I was just saying to my producer, Samara, under my makeup, I'm probably like purple. I'm incandescent with rage and I can feel it like beaming out of my face. But thankfully, good old Nessa, the makeup lady, has put me in 5,000 layers of Elizabeth I sort of, face paint. So you can't actually see that. Otherwise, I'm okay. How are you, Del?
Yeah, lucky for you, you can get makeup. I'm just sitting here purple and incandescent.
Well, you're Scottish. It kind of goes with the territory, doesn't it?
That's weather beating. You got it mistaken with somebody else.
Right. What do you want to talk about, my mate?
I was on the Home Office page, right?
Yeah.
The .gov.
Yeah.
Now, I'm an ex-squaddy, and I was homeless before I joined the army, and myself and my wife were made homeless after I joined the army and treated like dirt by the local councils. Now, on the Home Office page, it states that the first duty of the government is for the care, security and social cohesion of its people.
Yeah.
It's a duty, right? So who gets charged with this dereliction of duty? Because I know what duty means, right? So there must be some way of charging whoever's responsible with this, the dereliction of duty.
Del, first of all, thank you so much for serving the country. We don't say that enough to our brave men and women of the armed forces and the sacrifice they make. Explain to me your story. You were homeless before entering the armed forces, and then you served as a squaddy, and you come out and you and your wife are then made homeless. I want to dig into that and find out what happened.
Well, I was medically discharged back in November 1991. Nothing's too horrific. But when we were discharged from the Army quarter, we were given what was called a letter of priority from the officer commanding the unit, right? And we were told to present this to any council housing department and you'll get straight in the door.
Right.
And they ignored it and threw it in the bin.
So you went to the local authorities and said, I'm assuming before then you were living in army barracks or army housing or military housing, right? Military accommodation. And then you discharged on medical grounds and you're told, well, look, this note of dispensation should make sure you automatically qualify for social housing while you put yourself back together and find your next employee and so forth. And no one gives you a social house. Were you put on a waiting list or were they just, did they just say no?
That's a longer story. I was told to go and register as homeless for a council house because this is getting confused. You've got social housing and council houses. The council should be building houses, not social housing which the property developers profit from.
Right.
That's a waste of our money.
So no one's given you a house at all?
Yeah.
Where do you end up living?
Ended up living in a caravan in my old man's driveway.
Gosh. How long for?
Oh, yeah, that got... I think it was about just under a year or so. An old caravan that he had lying at the side of his driveway. We cleaned it up and we had to live in there.
I mean, this is just absolutely astonishing to me that somehow we've mustered up a load of 4-star hotel accommodation for randos breaking into the country, and yet our veterans have just said, oh, you're not going to qualify for any sort of support whatsoever, despite being medically discharged from the armed forces.
That's correct. And there was no follow-up. I've not heard anything. Are you still alive, Del? No, nobody in the armed forces has asked me that question since I left.
Del, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I'm sure you were one, I know you will be one of many, many veterans who have been disgustingly betrayed by this country. We're going to take a short break now. Keep your thoughts coming in. 0344 499 1000, number to call. Same on WhatsApp, 87222 on the text. Put talk before your message. Back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello, welcome back to the show. So many messages and calls coming in. Let's go straight to the phone lines and speak to Paul, who's in Horsham. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Alex. Nice show.
Why, thank you. What's on your mind?
What's on my mind? We were talking earlier on, you were, about Starmer's not talking about the court case, the Supreme Court case.
Yeah.
He's not doing much about the boat people or talking about it. And the rape gangs, more importantly, I think, especially that conversation you had with us. The reason for that is I have a good reason why he's not talking about it.
Oh, what is that?
He's on holiday.
What, permanently?
I hope so, but he's on holiday.
I don't think it'd make a blind bit of difference if he was on holiday permanently, actually, or maybe actually give the nation a break from his sort of mad socialism. I mean, he's been on holiday this past week, right? But does that mean he can't tweet things or say things?
Maybe he's thrown his devices away. Just have a good holiday. That wouldn't surprise me.
Where's he gone? Do we know?
I was going to ask you that question.
I wonder if he's gone back to his beloved socialist workers' camp that he went on holiday to when he was a student on his little sort of gap year. It's mental, isn't it, that we have, as Prime Minister of the UK, a guy who graduated from university and went to work in the USSR underneath the auspices of a Soviet spy in a workers' camp. Is that not a little bit red flag, pardon the pun?
I think you know more than I do about him. Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'm 63 years old, Alex, and I've come across... I'm an ex-motor mechanic now, former motor vehicle technician, Volkswagen Audi. I've come across an awful lot of horrible men in my lifetime. Service managers, friends that you think they're friends. Starmer, in the last, I don't know, year and a half, is the worst person I have ever come across. The reason why he's not doing anything about the rape gangs, in my opinion, they're Muslims, most of them.
Well, yeah, that's true.
And the reason for that is he knows they're going to vote for him in 4 years' time.
I think that's partly it, but I kind of think even now Labour have realised that the jig is up, that actually they've got their pro-Gaza MPs now. They can just vote for the sort of, Muslim vote candidate. I think actually it's worse than that. I think the reason he's not doing anything is because now he's realised that everything is so messed up in this country that the only thing that can be done to try and prevent it going kaboom is to not talk about it, to just try and cover it up and to silence people and attack and persecute people who want to bring these facts to the light of day. I think now that basically our public services at large are terrified, because if we did all get to the bottom and see on a regular basis quite what is going on, and we think we might see more of what's going on than we ever did, but I'd imagine it's the tip of the iceberg, and that actually what that risks if we do talk about these things and address those things is there's a lot that's going to be very difficult to do anything about. It's going to be extremely difficult putting the genie back in the bottle, for want of a better phrase. And I think what is essentially happening with this gaslighting, making us all feel like we've gone berserkules and that there's nothing to see here and no problem, is because the risk of telling us that we're right, that they've messed up this country so much, the risk is that we would be up in arms, and that's what they don't want to happen. I think that's what the whole management, if you will, for want of a better phrase again, of the riots was all about. It was essentially scapegoating someone like Lucy Connolly, using her as an example, a political prisoner, to show the rest of us, if you dare try and address any of these problems, if you say anything, this could happen to you. You could be rotting in prison. And that's what they're using as the dirty cork in the festering bottle of lies and deception that this government and previous governments have just fed to us constantly. That's what they're doing. They're trying to cork it all up.
Yeah.
Paul, my darling, thank you ever so much. Let's speak to Pam, who's in Edinburgh. Hi, Pam.
Hi there, Alex. How are you?
Well, I'm all right, actually. I could do with a gin and tonic, if I'm honest with you.
Well, I think you should have a double one, because you've done very well tonight, and my heart goes out to you. That was a hard interview, and I saw you were upset. And my heart also to Jaden and his nana Ange. Oh. What a despicable thing has happened to them. We are living now in Britain, a great country that is crumbling, because we have a government that does not care about us. I mean, Starmer spends all his time flying around the world trying to be, well, recently I think he wants to be a major of the American and, Israeli and Ukraine. I mean, he's an absolute idiot. The whole lot of them are idiots. And these poor people that have suffered that for years and nothing's happening, my God, what is going on with our country?
I tell you what they are. They're weak. They're career politicians. They're ugly celebrities. Yeah. They want to be the MP so they can be the big I am in their area and cut ribbons and, be sort of famous on a small scale to make them feel like they got cojones, like they're someone important. They can walk around the Palace of Westminster with all of their aides and be, I'm an MP. I'm going to naked. That's what it's all about. They don't have any conviction. They don't have any political ideology. They don't have any backbone. They barely even have a moral compass. These people are just vainglorious. If given half the chance, they'd just happily be in a cameo of The Mummy Returns. They don't have any interest in politics or this country at all.
No, I agree with you. And I spoke to Kev O'Sullivan a few months before Christmas, shortly after Trump came into power. And I said, love him or hate him, you know, he had the right idea, although I think he's going a bit over the top now. But I did say to Kevin, I think what's happening here is the fact that Starmer's letting all these people in, yeah? All these immigrants in. He's not doing anything about all these gangs because he knows in a few years' time, by that time, hopefully this damn country will waken up to what we're living with, and he will want to be the messiah of the immigrants, yeah? He will give them the vote. He will give them the vote, and if we are not careful, this country is going to be overrun. Not with our people. And I do believe that. I really do believe that, and that worries me.
Pam, got a fog in my throat. I agree. Let's go to ad break.
I was chatting to a girl on Hinge, dating app.
Sure, she was a girl.
That's a good question. I haven't had the first date yet, so we'll see. But she worked in the press office for the Blob in the civil service in Whitehall. And I'll say it must have been a tough day on Thursday, crisscrossing around the country, trying to say that the Labor Party all along actually didn't believe that a man could be a woman.
Yeah.
And she gave me those exact words. She said, "We've just been told it will provide much needed clarity for us going forward." And so it's interesting to see how these words just get spun up somewhere deep in the recesses.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, that was an unceremonious segue into the advert break. I tell you what, in all my years of reporting, I've never had the attack of the sort of spontaneous cough. So I was just sitting here quietly listening to Pam, and I think I just hoovered up out of the air some sort of dust bunny that went straight onto the cough button in my mouth. And normally, if you end up in that sort of frog in throat situation, you can sort of, you know, if there's something else going on and an interviewee speaking, you can press a magic little button here and cough. Or talk to control and say, oh, I'm going to start coughing. Can you play something out? Because I was listening to Pam in full screen, I was just like, that was unpleasant. Anyway, the throat still hasn't recovered. I've almost downed a pint of water. I don't know what happened there. Just like, woo, some sort of dust got in me. To alleviate my symptoms, though, let's have a listen to some voice notes. This is Steve.
Hi, Alex. I can only echo your sentiments that both of them credit to themselves and credit to each other, and their strength through the most horrendous times is truly, truly exemplary. And things like this can't be left just to that poor woman trying to knock on doors. Please talk, pick this up, run with it. And even if it doesn't actually get anywhere, rattle some feathers. Let this be known that this is happening. Make more people aware. It cannot go on.
Yeah, I was, of course, talking about the interview I did earlier with Jaden and Ange Sheeran. Jaden, the son of Jodie Sheeran, who was raped by a grooming gang at the age of 14, Ange, Jodie's mother, Jaden's grandmother, and the two of them desperately trying to seek justice. Let's have a listen to Peter on the same topic.
I think it's absolutely disgusting what happened. And that took place under Tony Blair, under a Labour government. And to think that just a few weeks ago that the Labour government still won't hold a public inquiry into the grooming gangs, into thousands and thousands of young British girls, is absolutely disgusting. Please, I hope you replay this interview on Talk TV and radio as many times as you can. People have got to know about this.
Yeah, and all credits to my incredible producer this evening, Samara, who is the one who sourced the story and was determined that we got to give it a platform here on Talk. She is a truly brilliant woman, so all credits to her. Let's speak to Chris in Epsom. Hi there, Chris.
Hey, Alex, how you doing?
Well, I'm okay. I've still got a bit of a in my throat, so you go ahead. You be presenter, would you?
Well, you had a good Sunday. I read your Substack.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we talked about HTV before.
We did, yeah. It was a brilliant Easter service. I absolutely loved it. I mean, you know HTB. That church doesn't do things by half. And it was a real celebration because, you know, Easter Friday is the horrors of remembering what happened to a man, whether you believe in God or not, to this historical figure, Jesus Christ. And Easter Monday for Christians is the celebration. My word, didn't we celebrate in my church? It was absolutely glorious.
Right, now, I want to open out the conversation about Starmer a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
If you listen to Hitchens went to university with him, and Starmer was a bigger Marxist than all of them.
Yeah.
Even I can't, his name's escaped me now. Even the leader, the Labour leader that's got stepped down. What's his face? The horrible man.
Corbyn.
Yes, called the Corbyn and the Corbynistas. He was worse than him. Now.
Yeah.
Blair set all these judicial systems and international systems up, and we've got to investigate the grooming gangs without a doubt. Yeah. But there's something else, Alex, as well.
Yeah.
This WHO treaty that's coming round again to be signed in July.
Yeah.
If you remember, last April, all of a sudden it sprung up, and they put into it that we had to follow their lockdown orders should there be another medical pandemic crisis. But at the 11th hour, I don't know if you're aware of this, right, they added in climate crisis. So
they didn't. Oh, the climate crisis. I never understand, Chris, we'd be given the mirage of democracy with all these layers and layers and layers of politicians. We've got more MPs and lords and mayors and police and crime commissioners and all the people in the devolved government than communist China. And yet we don't have democracy because we give all the power to supranational organisations. It's ridiculous. Chris and Epsom, thank you ever so much. And look who's just come into the studio. It's Mr. Dave. Hello, darling.
Good evening. How are you, Alex?
I'm right. I literally, because normally, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, this man is my editor, my boss. He's going to call in from behind
Desperate
the camera
times
and be
call
in
for
front
desperate
of it.
measures, I'm
But I'm
afraid.
glad you're asking after my health, because I did have a frog in my throat.
No, I know. I did see. I was quite concerned. I even ran in, actually. I don't know whether or not the lights permitted you to see through the glass. There you go. You see, I don't know if the lights permitted you to see through the glass, but I did actually run in to make sure you were okay.